All right, everybody. Welcome to the Peter Schiff Bitcoin Challenge. Now, first of all, I got to make a little bit of a confession here because I really was not familiar with YouTube live streaming and live chatting. And so the way I thought about this in my head, I thought that people were going to be able to talk, kind of like a Skype group conversation, that people would be able to actually engage me and make their case in their own voice and be able to have a little back and forth. I didn't realize that the way I had to do this was with a chat where people who want to make a point can make their point. They have to do it by chat. And so I'm going to try my best. Hopefully this format can work. And so the idea would be, and there's so many of these chats that are going by, it's even hard to keep track of it. But I want to see if people can put together a cogent argument, concise. Think of it like you're composing a tweet for Twitter. And I could try to address each point and think, as best I can, and try to take in what you're trying to tell me in an argument that you're trying to make as to why I'm wrong about Bitcoin and why I should actually be embracing it as digital gold. And so what I'm going to try to do is see the best points that are being made on this chat and then maybe read it out loud and then try to address it, think about it, make a statement. And then if the person who authored that particular text listens to what I have to say, if they want to do a follow-up or something, they can do that. And hopefully I'll notice it. It's, I see these things going by a mile a minute on the screen here on my laptop that you guys can't see, but it's down on my desk. And by the way, so I'm doing this chat in my home studio. I'm in Connecticut, and I'm doing the studio that I normally do my video blogs on. So if you're new to this channel, you should subscribe to it because I do 2 or 3 times a week. I do these video blogs where I talk about all sorts of things that are relevant to people who are buying Bitcoin. I mean, if you're buying Bitcoin because you're worried about the U.S. economy, the fiat monetary system, inflation, that's what I talk about. Right now, I'm just not of the opinion that Bitcoin is going to be a good hedge. But if you believe it is, I'm talking about a lot of the things that have motivated some people to buy Bitcoin. Now, I know a lot of people are motivated by the fact that they think they're going to get rich, but there are some people that have other motivations. And so I'm going to, I put out a lot of content that you would probably, find very interesting, forgetting about, Bitcoin. But in any event, what I want to throw out there initially, though, because I have all sorts of problems with Bitcoin. It's not just one, but I want to just kind of go over before I start responding to anybody's points that they want to make. And again, if you're somebody like me who's skeptical about Bitcoin, you really don't need to put any chats in there, right? I think that what you want to do is maybe listen to what the people who are pro Bitcoin have to say, and see if they maybe they'll convince you. If they don't convince me, maybe they'll convince somebody. But I think I can handle all the anti-Bitcoin arguments myself. I just need somebody to do the pro ones. I'm not really sure what just rang there. Let me turn the volume off on my cell phone. But here's the big thing about it that I just can't get over in my head, and that is the idea that Bitcoin is a store of value, that it can ever be a store of value, and that it's digital gold, right? That it's a digital version of gold, because that is the argument that is being made right now in support of Bitcoin, that it's digital gold. Now, of course, that has changed because when Bitcoin first came around, when I first learned about it, and of course, I should have bought it, obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, because I first learned about it, the price was very low. I mean, compared to where it is now, I mean, it was under $100 a coin. I can't remember exactly where it was. It might have even been $10. I really don't know because I found out about it a long time ago, probably in 2010, maybe even in 2009. I mean, really when it was starting out. And the reason that I dismissed it at the time is the reason I'm still dismissing it now. And I couldn't get over this one mental block that I have to accepting that Bitcoin can succeed. But initially, the argument was that it is a great medium of exchange. It wasn't initially sold to me as this incredible store of value or digital gold. The idea was that, hey, this is great for micro payments. that the problem with gold is if you want to buy a cup of coffee, how do you shave off, some gold off of a coin or a bar? This is great. I mean, you can buy, a $5 cup of coffee and pay for it with Bitcoin, and it's a great medium of exchange, especially for e-commerce. That was how it was originally talked about it. And since there was this limited supply, that there would be a lower rate of inflation in the creation of Bitcoins than the creation of fiat currencies. And so it could be a more reliable store of value. But the main thing was, hey, it can function as money because it's both a medium of exchange and a store of value. Well, the medium of exchange argument kind of fell apart because today, most people who are advocating Bitcoin concede that it's not going to be used for ordinary transactions. But of course, that's exactly what everybody was saying in the beginning. And they've abandoned that because it didn't work. And they're saying, well, there'll be other cryptocurrencies that you would use as a medium of exchange. But Bitcoin is just going to be digital gold, that Bitcoin is just going to be like a reserve for all these other currencies, or it's just the one currency that people own, even though they can't use it for anything, that it's somehow going to be like gold, as if you can't use anything for gold, which is nonsense. And that's also part of the problem. But incidentally, and I'm not, trying to make this a commercial or anything, but the ironic part about it is you can actually use gold to buy a cup of coffee. I mean, that argument that you can't use your gold to buy a cup of coffee is not true, because, and you take a company like Gold Money that I'm involved with. If I am a coffee merchant, if I own a coffee shop and I want to be paid in gold, I can. All I got to do is go and open up a Gold Money account. And if one of my customers walks into my coffee shop and he has gold and he wants to pay me in gold, and I also have a Gold Money account, I can accept it. I can charge him $5 or whatever, $8 for a cup of coffee, and he can give me $8 worth of gold. He can transfer it from his cell phone to my cell phone, just like you may be able to transfer some Bitcoin from one person to another. You can do that with gold. It works perfectly. In fact, gold today, and people say, I don't get technology. I get technology, and technology, the internet today and computers and what we have today actually makes gold a better medium of exchange than it's ever been. It's easier. Now, some people will say, well, Peter, you have to trust a third party. See, that's why it doesn't work, because somebody has to store the gold. Because obviously, if I'm transferring ownership of gold to buy a cup of coffee, I am not fizzing somebody my gold. I'm giving them ownership of the gold. The gold is sitting in a vault somewhere in Switzerland or Dubai or Singapore or Hong Kong, right? Wherever I want to keep it. But Gold Money, for example, Gold Money keeps their gold with Brinks. And Brinks has been in business for over 150 years. And people say, oh, you can't trust third parties. People have trusted their gold with Brinks for 150 years. They haven't lost an ounce. I mean, capitalism, the free market, is all about trusting third parties. That's what you do. But how do third parties win your trust? They have to win a good reputation. They have to instill trust in the public. Because obviously, a lot of companies can offer storage facilities for your gold and allow you to transact in it electronically. So rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, right, I think it makes a lot more sense. If people want out of the fiat monetary system, if they want a reliable store of value that can function as a medium of exchange, they don't have to look to cryptocurrencies, just look to gold and marry modern technology with real money. And this gets to the point, and I'm going to start responding, but I want you guys to hear my thought patterns when it comes to Bitcoin. The reason that I have confidence that gold is going to be there as a store of value, right? The reason I know that is gold's been around for thousands of years. So the fact that it's valuable now is nothing new. And gold, contrary to what people are saying in Bitcoin, they say that gold has no use. Well, that's ridiculous. Gold has more uses than any other metal on the periodic table. It is the most useful metal there is. Now, and the only reason it's not used more is because it's too expensive. So there are certain things that gold is not used for because other metals will function and work. But there are some things where you need gold, and they use gold because there is no substitute that will work for less money. And that demand is going to be there in industry, right? That's going to be there in electronics or aerospace or cell phones or dentistry or all the places where gold needs to be used. And we have no idea things that might be invented in the future that need gold. We don't know because people have been using gold for thousands of years. Of course, the biggest use is in jewelry, right? Half the gold that is sold each year, mined each year, is consumed in that industry. So you have industry, jewelry demand, cultures around the world, whether it's India, China, all over the world, gold is valued as jewelry. That's not going to stop. This is going on for centuries, right? People aren't going to stop adorning themselves with jewelry, and they're not going to stop wanting gold. So I know that there's always going to be demand for gold in industry, right? There's going to be demand for jewelry, and central banks, which own about 20% of the gold. Central banks need gold. It is a monetary asset. And as people lose confidence in the dollar and they're looking to replace those reserves, central banks are going to be buying gold. So I know the demand is going to be there from different sectors. And I think investors, right now, investors own very little gold. At one point in time, a typical portfolio would have 5 to 10% in physical gold. Now most portfolios have no physical gold. And I think that's a mistake because I think people have been too complacent and have had too much faith in the fiat monetary system. And so they haven't seen a reason to own gold. They've had too much trust in central banks. But as that trust fades, as we get more and more inflation, then I think portfolios, there's going to be investment demand. So I'm confident that gold is going to store value. It has stored value for centuries, and I think it will continue to store value because before gold was money, gold was a useful, valuable luxury good, universally accepted, universally sought after. Now that brings me to Bitcoin. All right. Now, this is what you guys have to tell me when it comes to Bitcoin. How am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to have confidence to put any kind of money, real money that I worked hard for and earned, put that money into Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin has been around for 10 years. 10 years. I've got a pair of socks that I've had for more than 10 years, right? I mean, how am I going to have confidence in the long-term viability of something that has a 10-year history? Number one. Number two, nobody can do anything with a Bitcoin. I can give it to somebody else, but they only want it because they think they can give it to somebody else because they think he'll want it. And of course, everybody that's buying it thinks the price is going to go up. And that is what is generating demand. But apart from that, how do I know? Just because people want to buy Bitcoin today, how do I know anybody's going to want to buy it in the future? Whether it's a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Is there a problem? Oh, yeah. How do I know? How do you have confidence in that? Because as I said with gold, there is real demand for gold. I know there's industrial buyers and jewelry buyers and demand that has existed. I don't know that people are going to want Bitcoin in the future. There's a small percentage of the population that wants it now, but they may not want it in the future for who knows how many other reasons. Either because somebody comes up with a cryptocurrency that they like better than Bitcoin. I mean, here's one of the things that really gets me, right? The people who believe in Bitcoin, they say, well, Bitcoin is the first one, right? So all these other ones that have come after, these altcoins, these 2,000 other coins, they're not Bitcoin because Bitcoin came first. By a few years, that's not a big head start, the fact that it came first. Now, sure, I know there's been a lot more money invested in building out the infrastructure, but so what? It could all be malinvestment. I mean, how many times has the very first invention of something been the best? Zero, right? So Bitcoin would be unique in history in being the first invention, which is the best. That nobody comes up with a better mousetrap ever. In 10 years, in 20 years, in 100 years, they're still using Bitcoin. Like the first telephone. You think does anybody still use the first telephone? Of course not. They stink compared to the ones we got now. First automobile, the first airplane, the first television. I mean, any kind of invention, anything that man has invented, right, can be improved upon. Man didn't invent gold. Man discovered gold. Gold was here. Gold's a creation of God. It's not a creation of man. But anything man can make, man can improve upon. And so for me to believe that Bitcoin is it, that no one's ever going to come up with something better. And if someone does come up with someone better and everybody wants that, well, then what happens to Bitcoin? It's got no value. It collapses. But then if somebody comes up with something better than Bitcoin, somebody will come up with something better than that. So it can never work. You can't have a money or a store of value that has no value in and of itself. That's the key. You see, money was an invention that enabled man to trade more efficiently, because before money, it was barter, right? And people traded one good for another good. But obviously that's cumbersome because, let's say I am a chicken farmer, and so I got a bunch of eggs, and let's say I want a chair. Well, I got to find a guy that makes the chair that I want, and he has to need my eggs, right? And then we can do business. Right? Well, that's very inefficient. But one commodity that everybody wanted was gold, and you didn't have to worry about it. It stored its value indefinitely. You didn't have to use it right away or spend it right away. And since everybody wanted it, instead of trading, these goods, this is what I want: a chair. Here's gold. Somebody wants my eggs. They give me gold. But I got something of value. I got a commodity that had a use. And the reason that gold is such a good store of value, right? And that's the point. Store of value is because the value of gold is everything that you can use it for, from jewelry to industrial uses in computers and aerospace and dentistry and all these things, right? Those are the values. But I can store that value in my gold. I can have a gold, and you could take gold and make it into a piece of jewelry, right? You can go on Mene and buy some 24 karat jewelry, buy yourself a bracelet, and that can be in your family for generations. And then your great 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 grandchild can decide that they need money, and they could take that bracelet and melt it down, or just sell it for the gold weight. And the bracelet could be melted down, and gold is exactly the way it was when it was first made into that bracelet. It wouldn't have lost any of its properties. There aren't other commodities that you can do that they're going to decay over time, or they're going to rot, or something's going to happen to them. But gold is going to maintain its properties, until there's a supernova, or whatever. The earth is enveloped by the sun. I mean, gold's going to be here. So that value can be stored. We don't know, Bitcoin, I keep saying it can't be a store of value because it doesn't have any value that you're storing. Right? There's nothing that I can do with my Bitcoin now, and so there's nothing that somebody can do with it later. Yes, I know that I can give my Bitcoin to somebody, but all they can do is give it to somebody else. But if nobody else wants it because they don't believe it's going up anymore, because the price starts to fall, then the music stops. You run out of greater fools. So that is the biggest thing. What you really got to convince me, and then there's other things you can point out, because I see all kinds of other flaws in making Bitcoin work. But even if you can convince me on something else, the hardest part is getting me to see the underlying value. And you can't try to come up with the idea that nothing has value. That's what I hear people saying. Well, nothing has any value. It's all subjective. That is a bunch of BS. Things have value. It's clear. It's not subjective. It's objective that certain things have value. Now, some people may value things more than other people, right? Well, that's true, right? Some people can put a higher price, a higher value. But the idea that something has value is clear because the value is what you can do with it, right? The things that you can do with a particular thing that give it value, right? But simply the fact that I can hold it, or in this case in Bitcoin, you can't actually hold it other than digitally in a wallet, whatever. But just because I can exchange it doesn't mean it actually has value. But anyway, let me go and what happened to my screen? Hold on, I think my screen changed somehow. There it is. All right. So now I gotta open it up and let you guys do your best. Give me your best shot. And where my biggest problem with Bitcoin. So, all right. I mean, all right. I want to forget about the questions. There's so much noise in this chat room because so many people are just communicating amongst themselves. So I want to get like a brand new point that somebody makes. All right. Paul, how do I stop this thing from moving? Yeah, this thing is like, I mean, I can't even read these questions because everything is going.
Just scroll up a little bit and it'll stop it.
Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Hold on. All right. No, it's not stopping. All right, I see a slow mode, but then the things keep on scrolling and I don't even see it. Okay. Yeah, okay, guy, you got to bear with it. I'm just learning as I go on this thing. I've never done one of these before. Wait, it's just it won't even stop. It's just like a okay. Wait. Okay. I got to be able to stop this from moving or I can't read any of these. Okay. To scroll up, see, someone's giving me instructions on how to do it, but it won't stop moving long enough for me to read it. It's just on the top it says top chat. Can I do live chat, top chat? Okay, what everybody's got to do is stop texting me. Let me figure out how to, or texting each other. I got to figure out how to stop this thing from moving. Or if somebody is going to tell me how to do it, it's got to stop down so I can read it. Change to slow mode. I've seen people, well, how do I change to slow mode? Paul, can you find something on going to slow mode? Everyone's telling me slow mode. The reason I keep wiping my upper lip is I got these lights on, and so it's hot. It's hot in this room. It's not that I'm nervous or anything. I'm just sweating under these lights. Where's the slow-mo? Hold the scroll bar down. What's the scroll bar? The space bar? Wait. What's the scroll? Which is the scroll bar? Oh, wait. The up and down keys are just making it go faster. He's sweating because he can't find. No, I'm sweating because of the lights. I just told you guys that. It's hot in here. And my air isn't working down here. I just have this. All right. It's stop. Wait. Okay. This is why. Okay. This is not why I don't understand Bitcoin. See, I can see a lot of people are saying the reason that I'm not on board with Bitcoin is because I don't understand it. No, I think the reason that people are buying Bitcoin is because they don't understand it. You know, and one thing I think I've determined in my interactions with people who are completely into Bitcoin, and I know a lot of them. I have some good friends that that are into Bitcoin. You know, I mean, like totally. There's nothing I can say to change their minds, right? But one thing I've noticed about it is, people believe in it so deeply. I mean, that's one thing. For now, yes, there is a lot of confidence because it is a confidence game. You see, a lot of the people in Bitcoin, they are, they're saying, oh, fiat currencies are no good. And I agree, they're not. They're going to fail. They always do. History is replete with examples. Every fiat currency has failed. And every time they've failed, they've gone back to gold. And, I'm one of these people that, I think that something that has always happened is likely to happen again, right? To say that this time it's different is a stretch, right? It makes more sense to me that something that's worked for thousands of years will continue to work. Right? Something that's brand new might not necessarily work, right? Those are the famous last words of people that have lost a lot of money. It's different this time. But what gives a fiat currency its value is confidence, right? There is no intrinsic value with the dollar or the euro or the yen or any of these currencies. At one point, they were all backed by gold when they were legitimate currencies. And even when they were backed by the dollar after Bretton Woods, the dollar was backed by gold. So everything was backed by gold. Now it's not. Now it's backed by nothing. So what's it backed by? Confidence, right? Same thing that Bitcoin is backed by, right? People have confidence in it. And I know there are people right now that have a lot of confidence. Now, it's a small part of the population that has that confidence. And what you're betting on is that more and more people will be as confident as you are. But what if they're not? What if the confidence, has a limit? What if you can't get beyond a small percentage of the world deciding to put their trust and their faith in Bitcoin, right? Because that's what it is. You're putting your trust in it. At least with the dollar, there's a long tradition of use. Everybody has it. There's prices in dollars. It works as a unit of account. It works as a medium of exchange. It's not a good long-term store of value because it loses, even by the government's definition, inflation is 2 to 3% a year. So the currency is losing 2 to 3% of its value a year, but merchants can handle that. I mean, landlords can handle that. You rent, you have a long-term lease. There's bumps. There's an inflation clause. People build it into their contracts. They price it into bonds. I mean, you can live with and work with a slow decline in value. It's better to have no decline, but you can manage a slow decline. The problem is eventually it becomes a fast decline. That's always the case, and these fiat currencies will collapse. But what if there is a limit to how pervasive Bitcoin can become? The number of people who are going to believe in it, right? And once you get that point, if it's not large enough where Bitcoin never becomes a medium of exchange, at some point, the people who own Bitcoin need to sell. They can't hodl forever, right? If you want to buy something and the world still wants payment in dollars or euros or gold, whatever, if they don't want Bitcoin, right? Once you have to step outside that, and once the hodlers start selling because they actually want to buy stuff, then everything collapses. And of course, the miners have to sell some. They got to pay their electric bills. They got to pay their rent. They got to pay their employees. There is a cost to maintain this network that is very high. And those costs have to be paid in dollars or euros or yen or whatever currency it is. So you have to generate that. And when it stops, the whole thing is going to implode. I would suggest, Roy Sabag of Gold Money. And by the way, he's the largest shareholder, one of the largest shareholders in Bitfarms. So, I've seen him portrayed as just a gold shill. Look, he has got a huge vested interest in the success of Bitcoin and probably knows a lot more about Bitcoin than almost anybody. But he just did an interview. You can look at that. The title is, I think, Why We Need Gold and Bitcoin. So he's not as bearish on Bitcoin as me, although, he shares a lot of the concerns I have. But he has a big vested interest in Bitcoin's success. Yet, nonetheless, he is very skeptical that it will succeed. But he does have a bet that's been made that it will. But I think he looks at it as a long shot. I'm not the kind of guy that likes to bet on long shots. You see, if I'm convinced that we're going to have a monetary crisis and a fiat currency crisis, I'm 100% convinced that by owning gold and silver, I'm protected and I will benefit. It's a leap of faith to think that cryptocurrencies are going to provide the same benefit, that Bitcoin is going to provide the same benefit. Anyway, let me see. It's still scrolling. How do I got to figure out.
It's in slow mode now.
Okay. All right. I just stopped it. Okay. All right. Now I can actually read this. All right. Okay. Here's a point someone's making. Peter, what stops governments from seizing your assets like gold? Can you trust storing? Okay. Now, in theory, what stops people from stealing your assets is the law. Most countries have laws, constitutions that restrict the power of government, and they make just outright confiscation of things illegal. Now, of course, laws are broken, governments become corrupt, and they do all sorts of things. So is it possible that if you have gold and you have it stored, let's say with gold money, is it possible that a government in a country where you're storing it, and that's why we try to store it, they pick countries where they have the rule of law. So let's say for some reason, the Swiss government or they somehow unprecedentedly seize all the gold that's been stored. Well, I guess you're going to lose it. That's why we diversify. Don't have all your gold in one vault. Spread it around the world. What's the odds that every government is going to just seize every citizen's gold? I think it's kind of slim, but of course you can have some gold in your own possession, right? I don't tell people to keep all their gold with third parties. On the contrary, I say keep a lot of gold, yourself. And it's much harder for the government to seize that because they got to find it, right? They got to know where it is. But ask yourself this: if governments are so corrupt that they seize gold, they're going to be seizing a lot of things. They might be seizing property, real property. They might be seizing foreign currency. They might be seizing equities or whatever, all kinds of assets they can be seizing if they're going to seize gold. When Roosevelt in the United States made it illegal to own gold, he didn't send government troops to people's houses. If you didn't turn it in, nothing happened to you. There were penalties on the books, but nobody went to jail for not turning in their gold. And a lot of people didn't. That's why we still have all these old gold coins, because the ones that were turned in got melted down. So it's difficult for the government to find you. But if they can seize your gold, they can do the same thing with Bitcoin. Now, I know they said, well, they can't find the Bitcoin. Bitcoin is on the internet. Any transaction that you do with Bitcoin, you don't think that leaves a digital fingerprint? You don't think the government with their technology can figure out who's dealing in Bitcoin? But the other way that governments can seize a Bitcoin, and it's much, much more likely that governments are going to crack down on cryptocurrencies. Now, of course, they may not crack down because they may collapse before they have a chance. See, if Bitcoin succeeds, it will be a victim of its own success. That's the other problem. I don't believe that Bitcoin is actually a threat to the monetary system we have now. I don't think it's a threat to the fiat monetary system because I think it's going to implode on its own. But if I'm wrong, if it doesn't die on its own, the government will kill it. Because if the government actually thinks it's a threat, they are going to act to protect their monopoly on money. But what government would do with respect to Bitcoin is make it contraband or even make it harder for businesses. Look, I have a bank, right? Euro Pacific Bank. And for years, companies that deal in cryptocurrency have tried to open up accounts at my bank. And I've had to turn every one of them down. Not because there's a law that says I can't do business with companies involved in crypto, but because I would be out of business because of the other banks that would refuse to do business with me. And the reason they would refuse to do business with me is they don't want the compliance because the laws that are already there, and I think they're going to get a lot harder. I mean, the fact that Donald Trump is tweeting about the fact that he's not a fan of Bitcoin and he's saying all this negative stuff, and now Secretary Mnuchin is out today. Believe me, they are already cooking stuff up to crack down on companies using Bitcoin. They're not going to make it illegal. They don't have to do that. What they do is they just impose all sorts of requirements on any financial institution that has anything to do with Bitcoin. They make you responsible for any money laundering or terror or any illegal activity that takes place through anybody that you're working with. So they make it so hard. So the cost of compliance, that's why Gold Money had to get out of the crypto business because the regulators just descended on them with so much regulation and compliance that they destroy the profit in the business. And so that's why I wasn't able to. The government can crack down and make it impossible for anybody to convert Bitcoin into euros or dollars or yen. And even if America decides to do it, it can impose that on the rest of the world by just denying them access to dollars and the whole system that is dollar based right now that eventually will come to an end. But right now we have a lot of power because people are still using the dollar and they need access to the Federal Reserve. They need access to SWIFT. And the U.S. can say, well, we're not going to let you have that if you're involved with companies that are dealing with cryptocurrencies, and they can drive the whole thing down into the black market. They can certainly make it so institutions, everybody dreams that the institutions are going to come in to buy Bitcoin. That's just a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. But the government could prevent that from happening if they wanted to, right? So there's all sorts of ways. It's anybody who is worried that I can't own gold because government might outlaw it or seize it. I think you're taking a much bigger risk of what government could do to destroy whatever value you perceive exists in Bitcoin. I mean, if they really make it so you have no on rails or off rails, you can't once you own it, you can never convert it into another currency. You can just exchange it secretly with somebody else because obviously the government could make it illegal to deal in it and have very big criminal penalties for people that are caught, and it wouldn't be that hard to catch you. But they could drive the whole thing underground. And obviously you have a much smaller market if it's all underground in the black market. And then what is the value? So, I don't think worried about government seizing is a non-event as far as I'm concerned. Gold is safer, I think, and less likely to come under attack than Bitcoin, especially when governments own gold. Central banks own gold. They're big buyers of gold. They're doing that for a reason. And that's not going to stop. Let me see. Someone says, take question from Davik15. All right, who's he? Where's his question? Let me see. Yeah, so somebody is talking about how it's unhackable, right? How Bitcoin, and then yes, okay, I get that argument. You want to say that the Bitcoin blockchain is so good. There's so much hash power behind it that it's impossible for anybody to hack it, right? That's what its value is that it's so secure that security gives it its value. And my problem with that is several. I mean, one is that, Bitcoin is open source. There's no patent there. I mean, anybody can replicate Bitcoin. I'm not, there's thousands of other cryptocurrencies. They're not identical to Bitcoin, but if somebody wanted to make one that was identical, they they just would have a different name for it. But it could be just as secure. Now, obviously, it wouldn't have the computational power behind it yet, but neither did Bitcoin. And that's to say that a lot of that computers that are currently involved in Bitcoin couldn't become involved in something else. I mean, there's no, it's not like these computers only work for Bitcoin, right? They can work for somebody else. But also to think that something is impenetrable, that something is unhackable or it's totally safe when it's in the realm of technology. We're basing all this on what we know today, based on the technology that exists today. I mean, nobody knows what will be invented in the future. And I hear people, talking about how, well, why are you confident in gold? Because, we can get all this gold out of asteroids one day, and there'll be so much gold, it'll be so abundant that the value will crash. And I mean, that is so far-fetched as far as how many years in the future asteroid mining may in fact be viable, and what that might even mean to the price of gold by then. Who knows? I mean, we may need a lot more gold. I mean, and if we can get a lot of gold, I mean, maybe the spaceships will be made out of them. Who knows? But that is, something that's way into the future. What's much closer in the future potentially is something that can hack into Bitcoin or corrupt it and, render it worthless or just steal it all or do something. And so, when you're putting your faith in that technology and to say that, oh, it's going to endure indefinitely, given how fast we know that technology improves and people come up with things in the future that we couldn't even conceive of in the present, it's hard for me to even accept that. But even if I do, even if I accept that it's never going to get hacked, it's impenetrable, nobody will ever be able to crack it, even then, I still don't get the value, because all I've done is made something that has no uses perfectly safe. So no one could steal something that has no value. I've got this Bitcoin that I can't do anything with, but I can be sure and confident that no one is going to steal it. Well, eventually, no one's going to want it. What's the point of stealing something that you can't do anything with? The reason that people would want to steal it now is because there's somebody dumb enough to buy it, because there's a market. And you got to separate the difference between market value and real intrinsic value. Sure, Bitcoin has market value, right? People made a big deal of the fact that I accepted gifts of Bitcoin into my wallet. And at one point, my Bitcoin was worth like $2,800. I think now it's down to like $2,300 because the market's gone down. But yeah, I mean, I could sell that Bitcoin if I figure out how to do it, but I haven't sold it. I mean, it's not enough money that I even care. I mean, that's one of the reasons I didn't sell the original money or Bitcoin rather, that I got gifted from Eric Voorhees. That's how I got the Bitcoin. But, there's a lot of people out there that are saying, oh, I'm a secret holder of Bitcoin. Believe me, I mean, I wish I bought Bitcoin when it was $10 or $20, although I wouldn't own it now. I mean, I would have sold it. I don't know where I would have sold it along the way because I didn't do it. But clearly, I could have made a lot of money getting into a bubble early and making money off of people's greed and foolish behavior. I mean, it's not the first bubble I missed, but it's probably the bubble that was most tailor-made for me. So, it's kind of my kind of bubble. So, I mean, I could have gotten on board with it, but I didn't do it. But I don't own it. And so if people think I'm secretly trying to accumulate, that's really rich too. I see online people saying that, oh, Peter Schiff, he just wants to talk the price of Bitcoin down so he can buy more, which is crazy. I'm not talking it down, obviously. What I say has no effect. But I don't want to buy more. In fact, if I really wanted to tout it, and one of the reasons I didn't do it early on, I knew it was like a pump and dump. I wouldn't want to buy it and then try to convince other people to buy it just so what? I could sell, right? I'd be pump and dump. Oh, somebody is pointing out, all right, people are actually paying money to ask me questions.
Click on them, it'll pop their question.
All right, so I'm gonna pick what is that? What's a CLP? Is that a peso from Chile or something? Chilean peso? Yeah. So what currency is that? What's this 100? Is that US dollars? Someone just paid me $100. All right, somebody just paid me $100 to point something out. So who is this? Wolfpack Cryptos. Okay, so that name is a hint that it has something. This guy likes crypto. Okay. It says globalized monetary system starts to deteriorate due to global negative yields. I agree. Unprecedented debt causing inflation. Yes, I agree. I agree with that. That's going to happen. We have a massive bubble right now in bonds. The fact that bonds have a negative yield, I mean, if you ever needed a bubble that was more obvious, it's that, right? To buy a bond, you have no appreciation. When you buy a bond, you can't make any money. In fact, if you buy a negative yielding bond, you are guaranteed to lose money. Why would anybody do that? Nobody wants to lose money, yet they're doing that. You are lending money to a government, and you are agreeing that they're going to give you back less than you loaned them in the future, because there is a time value of money. Everybody prefers money today than money in the future, because the future is uncertain. I could be dead in the future, right? I may never get to enjoy that money. So having money now is better. Having things now. I mean, that's why people buy things. And it's all bullshit when these politicians, the central bankers, try to tell you that we need inflation, that prices have to go up. Otherwise, nobody will buy anything because they'll just wait for the price to go down. They don't do that, right? That's nonsense. People buy things when they need them. Everybody knows that if you need a cell phone today, if you wait a year, it'll be cheaper. But you can't wait a year. I want it right now. I want to use it for a year. I don't want to wait. So you buy things when you need them. Having something today is more valuable than potentially having it in the future. But now you've got people saying, hey, I've got 1,000 euros. I'm going to loan them to a government, and they're going to give me back 990 euros in 10 years. I mean, that's asinine. Why would you want fewer euros in the future rather than having more euros in the present? So this is a sign of a crazy bubble. This is the end of this fiat-based monetary system. This thing is going to collapse. Now, I mean, it's long overdue. I think it's going to start in the U.S. It's going to start when we go back to zero and quantitative easing. I think this is going to happen. Now, I know there are people, and I just did a premiere of the movie, the Bubble movie. I was in New York. We did a premiere, and one of the producers of the movie is David Tice, who used to run the Prudent Bear Fund. And David thinks there's a good chance that Bitcoin could have a big rise when the monetary system collapses, that it's possible that people rush into Bitcoin. And I get it. It is possible. I just think it's a long shot that it's going to happen, because, I mean, I don't know how you go from trust in one thing to trust in something else. I look at Bitcoin as fiat digital currency. I don't care that the government didn't declare it to be money. You don't have to have government declaring it. Fiat is based on faith and confidence. And that's exactly what Bitcoin is. I mean, Bitcoin could be backed by gold. I mean, anybody can come up with a cryptocurrency also backed by gold. And then it wouldn't be fiat. It would just be like a real digital currency. Just like when the dollar was backed by gold, that made it a legitimate currency. Now that it's backed by nothing, that makes it a fiat currency. Well, you could have a cryptocurrency that's backed by gold, or you could back it by silver, whatever you want. But then it would be legitimate, because what gives legitimate currency value is the real asset that backs it up. But what gives fiat money value is confidence, is people believe. So if people lose confidence in the dollar or the euro, are they just going to suddenly put their confidence in Bitcoin? I think they'd rather have something that they can trust, something they can see, something they can touch, that they can hold, and that they know has had value, for all these years. So I think it's harder. But is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But it's also possible that the bubble in crypto actually bursts first. And if you get a big enough drop in the value of Bitcoin, then nobody is going to want it, right? Because remember, the demand for Bitcoin is based on the belief. If people didn't think the price would go up, they wouldn't buy it. And a lot of people who are hodling it, the reason they're hodling it is they're afraid. They're fear of missing out on bigger gains. So people don't want to cash in their Bitcoin because they think if they wait, they'll get a lot more money. But if they think the price has peaked, then there's no reason to wait. Buy stuff now because you want it now, right? You don't have to worry about missing out on a bigger gain because the bigger gains are already there. And so then the price can implode. And then once the price implodes, then people aren't going to rush into it. So, and David Tice is a smart guy. And there are other smart people I know that still think, well, people will buy into Bitcoin. They might. But I know for sure that they're going to buy gold. I know for sure central banks will buy gold. There's no way, despite all this speculation, there is not a single central bank that is going to put any of their reserves in Bitcoin. It is never going to happen. They will not do that, right? But they will buy gold. They are buying gold. They're doing it now. And I know people say, well, Peter, why do you want to, excuse my dog, why do you want to buy something that central banks are buying? Because you criticize central banks. I do. I criticize central banks for creating fiat money and backing their currency with other fiat money. What I want central banks to do, to the extent that we have them, is to buy gold, to back their currency with real money. So I'm all in favor of central banks buying gold. The problem is a lot of central banks were selling their gold. They were being idiots. But anyway, let me click on some more of these questions on top. This may be, so let me look at this guy. Milkshake theory by Brent Johnson. U.S. Yeah, I know. In fact, I have a funny story about Brent Johnson, and you can see this video. And I read the milkshake theory, and I think it's all wet. Basically, I don't accept it. But I was on a panel with Brent Johnson in Vancouver back in late 2018. And everyone on the panel, it was very typical. They all were saying the Fed's going to hike rates in 2019. And Brent Johnson said their Fed is going to hike 2 or 3 times in 2019. And I said, not only are they not going to hike, they're going to cut rates 2019. And oh, no, impossible. So the moderator said, why don't you guys make a bet? Why don't you bet a gold coin? And I thought to myself, well, I should get odds on the bet because, it's a long shot, right? Nobody thinks the Fed's going to cut rates except me. Everybody thinks it's not a question of do they raise rates, but how many times do they raise rates? So I bet Johnson an ounce of gold. And the bet was if the Fed hikes rates in 2019, he wins. If the Fed cuts rates, I win. And in 2 weeks, they're going to cut rates. So I'm going to get an ounce of gold. But his theory, his milkshake theory is that everybody is going to plow into the dollar, that all these problems are going to cause people to buy the dollar. And that trade already happened, right? I don't think it's going to happen again. It happened after the financial crisis in 2008. The dollar was at a record low. And when the crisis hit, people rushed into the dollar. But now the dollar index is near a historic high. And gold in 2008 was at an all-time high of 1,000. People keep making fun of me. Oh, Peter, you look, gold's gone down. Yeah, only if you measure it from its peak at 1900 in 2011. Look, Bitcoin peaked at 20,000, right? So, it's half of its high. Gold is closer to its high than Bitcoin is. But gold started this run under 300 in 2001. So by the time it got to 2011, gold had rallied for 10 years and it had more than tripled, almost quadrupled in price. But people rushed into the dollar. They're not going to do that again because they've been buying the dollar. People have been buying the dollar for years because they believed the Fed was going to normalize interest rates, because they believed the Fed was going to shrink its balance sheet. That was all BS. I knew it was BS the whole time. I was calling them out on it, but the markets didn't get it. Well, now the Fed has done exactly what I said. They've aborted their attempts to normalize rates. They've aborted their attempt to shrink their balance sheet. And I think the world is on the wrong side of this trade. They already own the dollar. People already put money in the dollar. It's now they're going to sell. They're going to go out, read the tea leaves. Look what's going on in other countries. China, Russia, they're moving away from the dollar. They're not moving toward the dollar. They're trying to find ways to get out of the dollar system. And it doesn't make any sense that if you're going to have a debt crisis, that people are going to take refuge in the currency of the biggest debtor. America is the biggest debtor nation in the world. We owe more money than all the other debtor nations in the world combined. We have massive trade deficits, current account deficits, no domestic savings. We are not the cleanest dirty shirt in the hamper, but by far the dirtiest shirt. And no one's going to want to put that shirt on. So I think that milkshake theory is all wet. I think it's played out. I think everybody is long the dollar right now because they believe that. And I'm a contrarian, and I think the contrarian play is that you be short the dollar. The dollar is going to tank. Gold's going to rise. And, will Bitcoin go along for the ride? Again, I don't think so. It's possible, maybe. But then it's going to collapse. It's just going to collapse from a bigger price. So even if the bubble gets bigger, even if we take out 20,000, but I still think that taking out 20,000 is not probable. It's possible, but I don't think it's probable. I think it's more probable that 20,000 was the peak. And if you look at what's happened to the altcoins, and I've been pointing this out, right now, Bitcoin dominance is back up to like 66%, 66.5%. It's broken out. To me, it looks like it's headed up to 80%. But I remember when Bitcoin was shrinking and losing share, everybody said this is great. This shows that crypto's pie is getting bigger. More people are accepting crypto, and it's a good thing that Bitcoin is becoming a smaller part of the crypto pie. Now they're saying the exact same thing, which is always what happens, right? They always want to rationalize. All news is good news if you're in Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter how bad it is, right? If it's lemons, you make lemonade out of it. So now people are saying that, well, the fact that Bitcoin is gaining dominance just proves that Bitcoin is digital gold and it's the winner. It doesn't. We have a bear market in cryptocurrencies, and what's happening is people are moving maybe to what they perceive to be a stronger coin than the other coins, but they're all going down. And remember, a big part of the demand for Bitcoin was to use it to buy other cryptocurrencies, but the other cryptocurrencies are losing value, right? They're shrinking. And I think basically Bitcoin may be the last crypto standing. That's probable, but it's not going to stand very tall because they're all going to go down, right? If Bitcoin goes to 80% dominance again, it's not going to be in a bull market. It's going to be in a bear market where Bitcoin just loses more value than the other coins. And I know people say, well, people are going to take the money out of the other coins and buy Bitcoin. No, they're not. You can't take that money out. That money goes to money heaven. Most of the money is all on paper. You have to sell in order to get your money out. But that means somebody has to buy. But if people don't want to buy, the price just collapses and the money just vanishes. It can't go anywhere because it's already gone. So let me see this question here. Jason, what is Jason saying? I'm clicking on him and it just says, there's nothing there. It just says Jason 20. Here, when the stock market crashes, won't people sell their gold to survive, thus making the price drop? Well, I don't think so. I mean, first of all, generally, right, when the stock market crashes, people are selling stocks. That's why they're crashing. And now they're looking for an alternative. They're looking for a place to park the money they get when they sell their stocks. And if there's a lot of inflation, which I think there will be, more people are going to want to park their money in gold than just in cash, especially if you've got no yield. I mean, one of the things they used to say about gold was, well, there's no yield. I can put my money in the bank and get a 5% interest. You can't do that anymore. I mean, you get zero interest or negative interest. And then when you adjust it for inflation, you have real yields that are very negative. And so I think there's going to be a lot of demand for gold when the stock market crashes. And even if people need to spend their gold, somebody else will want that gold because if somebody is buying something, somebody else is selling something. So if one person buys something, the other person who sells it, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to buy gold. Or people could use their gold. See, people could actually use their gold as a medium of exchange. So if I have gold and I need to buy something, I can just use my gold to pay for it. That can happen. That has happened in the past. So no, I think a bursting of the financial bubble, a decline in stock prices is good for gold. And in fact, even if the price of everything went down, including the price of gold, let's say we actually had massive deflation, which I don't think we're going to have because the central banks will print too much money to allow that to happen. But let's say the price of everything let's say the price of real estate went down by 80%, the price of stocks went down by 80%, and the price of gold went down by 50%. Well, you're actually richer because now you can buy more real estate, more stocks with your gold because on a relative basis, your gold went up. And that's what's important, not the dollar price, but what you can buy with gold. And so if other prices fall more than gold, well, then you're better off if you own gold. But I don't think that's going to happen because the dollar is going to fall more. The euro is going to fall more. The yen is going to fall more. So prices are going to go up. It's just that gold prices are going to go up a lot more than other prices. So let's see this next one. Brandon Lee. What does Brandon have to say? I can't see. Just okay, here. Brock Johnson. I didn't even realize I was going to get money on this thing. I mean, I just found out about that people could pay me. But I guess that means you got a really good point you want to make. And so that's how you can jump to the top of this chart here. My generation doesn't think of themselves. They listen to YouTube. The YouTubers are shill moon boys who make money. I can't see the rest of it. But I mean,
money off their channel and that alone, they're ignorant for trolling you.
Oh, but I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are shilling for Bitcoin. I mean, that's why it has it reminds me a lot of a pump and dump, right? That's what was going on because you don't know, and that's the other thing about Bitcoin that makes me so leery of it because there's not that many people that own it, right? The so-called whales, the big guys that got in really cheap, that have huge positions, right? You have complete concentration. I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 people own whatever it is, most of the Bitcoin. And I don't know what their agenda is. I mean, I know there are some people that are true believers and are going to hodl till the end, which is exactly what the pumpers who intend to dump want, right? Because if I own a bunch of Bitcoin that I bought cheap, I want to drive up the price so I can sell out higher. I want to make sure that I don't have other people selling. So to convince people to hodl forever, hold on for dear life and never sell, tune out all the FUD, right? You want to do that. That's brilliant. You want to make sure that the people who think this is real, they never sell. And there could be some people who are in Bitcoin now who totally know it's not going to work, who just want to pump up the price so they can dump their coins on the market and walk away with a home run. And if you're in Bitcoin, you don't know. It's like you go to a poker game and you don't know, if you're the patsy in the game, because there's some professional players there that are going to take advantage of you. And, maybe they let you win a few hands and then they end up taking all your money, right? I don't know who's at this table with me. I go down and I buy some Bitcoin and there's some big whales in there and they just may be suckering me in, just trying to get me to believe in this hype and get me to hold on to it and push the price up and fill my head with a bunch of BS, and they're going to dump. And nobody knows. Nobody knows what these guys are going to do. And people say, oh, I don't want to trust a third party. You're trusting all these big holders that they're being honest, and none of them are going to sell, or trusting the miners. I mean, you have to put so many trust in so many people that you don't even know that have a vested interest. I mean, there are people that are sitting on huge unrealized profits that have a vested interest to con people into Bitcoin so they can get out of it, right? And so there's so much trust there. If I just have a third party trusting my gold, holding my gold, at least I know who the third party is. I can look them in the eye. I can do some research. And if you're a third party holding gold, you have a reputation at stake. In a free market, reputation is the most valuable commodity, and it takes a long time to build a reputation. You're not going to blow it. So, I mean, there's so much more faith in Bitcoin than there would be in gold. Okay, this is TB. Peter, forget about gold and Bitcoin. We should be talking about Ethereum, MakerDAO, Agua, Compound Plasma. Those markets can be bet on an event like elections. Well, I mean, what does that have to do with their value? I mean, yes, I get you can use these cryptocurrencies, to gamble with online. Yeah, I mean, I could have a poker game and we can, instead of betting chips, we could bet Satoshis or Ether or whatever you want to say. But look at the Ether chart. I mean, it looks terrible. I mean, look at some of these currencies, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV. These things were down yesterday. They were down 20% in one day. I mean, this is incredible volatility. And, this is what people tell me. This is another leap of faith that you have to make to be in Bitcoin, right? Because, when Bitcoin went up to 20,000 and then it came all the way down to 3,000, right? People said, well, that's just the way it is, right? Bitcoin is volatile. It always goes down by 80, 90%, and then it comes back. Well, before that happened, people were saying that is over, that volatility was just in its infancy. And now that it's gone mainstream and it's up 10, 20,000, that it's not going to be as volatile. Well, they were wrong because it was just as volatile. But then what they said is, well, it's always going to be this. And this is just what you have to accept when you own Bitcoin, that at any moment it could drop by 90%. Well, what kind of crazy deal is that? I'm going to buy something knowing that it could drop 90%, but it's okay because it's going to come back. Well, how do I know that? Just because it came back the last several times doesn't mean it's going to come back every time, because all it has to do is not come back the last time, right? Bitcoin goes down 90%, and then instead of going back up and making a new high, it goes down another 90%, and then another 90%. How do you know? And of course, the early times, right? The first time when Bitcoin was starting and it went from 10 cents to $1 and then back to 20 cents and then up to $10 and then back to $1, whatever, and then up to $50. This was chump change. This wasn't real money. This was people putting their lunch money. I mean, it was no big deal. It was like a game back then. Now you've got real money. You've got people who have taken out cash advances on their credit cards. You've got people who have put IRA money into Bitcoin, real money, not lunch money. And so when the market goes down now, those are real losses. This isn't a game anymore. So I think it's a lot different now than it was then, based on the size of the stakes and how people are going to react. Yeah, if I put $10 into Bitcoin and it went down to $1, I mean, no big deal. I'm not going to care. Sure, I'll buy some more. Yeah, I mean, put another $5 in, another $10. What difference does it make? But if you put 100 grand in and it goes down to 10 grand and you've lost $90,000, which could be a lot of money for some people, that's a big deal. And you know what's going to happen too? The regulators are going to come out. They always do that. They always close the barn door when the horses are gone. and they're going to look for people to come after, because there are going to be some people that they're going to say committed fraud. That's what people are talking about. Fraud. Is there fraud? Did people induce other people to buy? Were there people that we can prove were pumping and dumping? Were they talking up Bitcoin while they were selling it, right? And who got scammed? Because you know what? When people lose money, they sue other people. There's going to be lots of lawsuits, a lot of lawyers, a lot of people are going to be lawyering up when this bubble pops, and they're going to be looking for somebody to blame and a way to get their money back. All right, let me go to this next question. 50. Peter, forget about, oh, I already got that one. What's this guy here? Bitcoin is tulip mania. In the 1600, people thought tulip bulbs would increase in value forever. And yes, I mean, so this guy is making, of course. And of course, when people were buying tulips and they were in the mania, obviously they didn't care because the price was going up. See, that's the big argument. People always want to say, Peter, you're wrong because look, the price has gone up. The price going up doesn't prove me wrong. The price goes up in every bubble. So you can't say something is not a bubble because the price has gone up, because by definition, if it is a bubble, the price is going to go up. And bubbles always get bigger than you think. And the people who are involved, they take a false sense of confidence from the price going up. It validates what they're saying. They think they're smart. There's an old expression, don't confuse brains with a bull market. Well, it's even more important not to confuse brains with a bubble, because a lot of people in the bubble have lost their mind. And that's why they tune out. Cognitive dissonance. That's why no matter what happens, no matter what the news is, if you're in Bitcoin, you interpret it as bullish. No matter how bearish it is, it's bullish to you because it's in the eye of the beholder. You hear what you want to hear, and you don't want to hear anything that would challenge your dream of instant riches, right? All I have to do is hold this Bitcoin and I'm going to be a millionaire or a billionaire. And nobody wants to believe that that's not true. And so their mind, mentally, they can't accept the fact that it's not true. They build up all these defense mechanisms. Okay. That guy already talked on. JP Morgan and Patreon are censoring conservatives and blocking their bank accounts. Bitcoin allows us to support. Yeah, I mean, it allows you to do things now, right? You can use Bitcoin to exchange value now, but the value you're exchanging is just perception. You can use Bitcoin for these things because other people want it. Why do other people want it? Because they think it's going to go up. That's why people want it. And that's why you can exchange it right now. And so, yes, sure, you can use it for those things. And look, I think it would be great if Bitcoin could work. I get the whole idea. Hey, let's take the power away from the central bankers, right? Let's put it in the hands of the people. Let's have the people's money instead of government money. Well, we have the people's money. It's called gold. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. But if Bitcoin could work, that I would be all in favor of it. The problem is I can't see it working because I can't see the market not collapsing at some point in the future because there's nothing behind it. It's all hype. And yes, there are good things that you can do with it. That's what makes the hype so much more real. That's what makes this bubble so appealing and so enticing, because there are things that you can point to about Bitcoin. It can do this, and this is great, and that is great. And so it has a lot of appeal, and that's what's helping to motivate it. But ultimately, what's driving it is greed. And I have a lot of experience with talking to people who are trapped in bubbles. Whether it was the housing bubble or the dot-com bubble, I interacted with people, and I heard all sorts of ways that people rationalize stuff that I knew was a bubble. And they had all kinds of crazy ways to justify what they were doing. But ultimately, it was because they didn't want to admit that they weren't going to get as rich as they thought. And nobody wanted to sell because nobody wanted to miss out on the much bigger gains. And so they held on, and they all got wiped out.
Here's a question that seems up a couple of times super chat. On day one, when the first person discovered the first piece of gold and mined it, why did that piece of gold have value? What was that piece of gold backed by?
Well, so somebody's asking me the first person that mined gold. I don't even know if the first person mined it. Maybe they panned for it. I'm not really sure exactly when somebody discovered gold. I mean, it was a long time ago that gold was discovered, and then people had to figure out what they could do with it. I mean, gold was not money. It wasn't like somebody found gold and said, hey, this is going to be great as money. I mean, gold was discovered, and then people discovered ways to use it, right? And things that they could do with it. And it evolved over time, and people began to appreciate the properties that gold had that other metals didn't have. And And since it was scarce and hard to come by, it was expensive. And then it became kind of a luxury and almost a symbol of wealth to the extent that you can afford gold, because you had to be wealthy to afford it. But I think the reason gold became money, again, money was invented by man to replace barter. And it's not like gold was the first thing that people used as money. It wasn't. I mean, and there are all sorts of things that have been used as money over the years. Gold just ended up being the best thing. But the reason it works is because you can use it. I mean, think about cigarettes being money during World War II. And they're money now. Cigarettes are money in prisons. People use cigarettes as money in a prison, but they were using cigarettes. The GIs were using cigarettes as money in Europe after World War II. Now, even if you didn't smoke, right, you would still accept cigarettes for doing work because you could give the cigarettes to somebody else. But what made the cigarettes money was because people liked smoking and people needed cigarettes. And even if you didn't smoke, somebody would, and you could smoke. It reminds me of that old saying about sardines, right? There's sardines that are for eating and there's sardines that are for trading, right? Well, the trading sardines are BS because if you can't eat them, there's no point in trading them. So gold is real money because you could use it. Bitcoin is just for trading because you can't use it for anything. But anything that you can only use for a trading vehicle will one day collapse. That is the problem that I cannot get over. Let me see. The possibilities of Satoshi Nakamoto being Jekyll Island 2.0 are the banks just pretending to hate and fear the new revolution. I don't think the banks are worried about Bitcoin. I mean, I think they're more worried about Libra, right? Because Facebook's Libra is a bigger threat to the bank's payment system because Libra could actually work if the governments allow it to work, right? And I think Libra would be better if it was backed by gold instead of a basket of fiat currencies. But it'll probably still be better than the dollar because it's going to be backed by other currencies that are stronger than the dollar. And it will probably be less expensive to utilize if governments allow it. But the problem is governments can use their regulatory authority to make it more cumbersome, to make it more expensive for the whole system to operate. But I think that governments don't like tax evasion. I mean, they talk about terrorism and money laundering, but they really couldn't care about that. It's tax evasion. That governments are raising taxes all around the world. And obviously, the higher taxes go, the stronger the likelihood is that people are going to try to evade them. And so the government wants to have control over the money. They want to know exactly what you have, where you're spending it, where you got it, so they can make sure that you're paying, your tribute. And so that's probably the thing that they don't like about it, is the fact that they think maybe this could challenge us in that people can be transacting and getting around these safeguards that we're creating. And even if it's not going to work, there's could be people in government that don't know that. I mean, that is the problem. If a lot of these Bitcoin evangelists, they're out there talking about how Bitcoin is going to bring down the dollar and replace the dollar as the reserve currency. Let's say Trump believes that. Let's say Mnuchin believes that. You don't think they're going to just take that line down? They're going to fight back before that happens. Your Bitcoin becomes a victim of its own success if it can actually succeed, which I don't think it will. Okay, someone's asking me to comment on Deutsche Bank, which, I've been talking about Deutsche Bank on my podcast for a long time. I've been warning people that the company was in trouble. And now, obviously the bank is basically divesting itself. It's laying off most of its workforce. And we'll see if that's enough. Most likely it's not. I still think they're probably going to have problems, but clearly what's happening. But that Deutsche Bank is also a victim of these low interest rates. I mean, banks were initially propped up by these low interest rates, but ultimately that's going to be their own demise. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. I mean, these bankers got in bed with the government, and what happens when you get in bed with the government? And the same thing with QE. These economies that are living by cheap money are going to die by it as well. And that is why people need a real alternative to the fiat system. And if you listen to what Jay Powell said at his, when he was testifying a couple days ago or last week, he said that he thinks the dollar is safe as the reserve currency for a while because he doesn't see an alternative. He doesn't know what currency would replace the dollar. Well, you don't need a currency to replace the dollar. We have gold. Gold will replace the dollar because the dollar replaced gold, and it was a bad choice. The world made a mistake in buying the U.S. because we conned the world into going off the gold standard by promising them that they could have their gold for dollars. See, we were the third party that the world trusted, and we screwed over the entire world, and we're going to try to do it again. But I think it's going to backfire on us, and the world's going to go back to gold. I mean, they're not going to make the mistake of jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. They're going to want to get out of the heat altogether. Says, when the dollar collapses, your average citizen will likely miss out on the gains from gold. Yeah, well, you know, a lot of people don't have anything anyway. I mean, if you're the typical American, you know, you have zero savings anyway. So the people who are in trouble are the older generation, people my age and older, who have accumulated savings and who are dumb enough to keep their savings in treasuries or corporate bonds or annuities or fixed annuities or things like that. That's what's going to get wiped out. Younger people will be okay because they have nothing to lose, right? And, you know, what they're going to have is their freedom. When we go back on a gold standard, and if we can shrink the size of government, we have more economic freedom, then we have more opportunity. So young people are going to be better off. Even if they don't own any gold now, they'll have plenty of opportunities to benefit from living in a world where we have sound money. But where I feel badly is people that are buying Bitcoin. This is where I feel bad. I think that if people are worried about the fiat system and they're smart enough to worry about it, and then they buy Bitcoin, they could end up being worse off than the people who weren't worried at all and did nothing. You know, people are missing an opportunity to buy some silver, buy some gold. That's why I'm saying, look, if you're one of these hodlers, take some of your winnings off the table. Don't be greedy, right? There's an old saying, you know, bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. If you bought a bunch of Bitcoin at a much lower price, take some off the table, right? And don't worry, because if it goes up to 1 million, you're going to be rich. It doesn't matter if you sell half your Bitcoin now, the other half, you'll still be completely rich. But if the whole thing collapses, you don't want to lose back everything. So take some of that Bitcoin and maybe buy yourself some silver, which, by the way, you can get silver at Gold Money. They do silver as well. And right now, silver has never been this cheap in terms of gold. You know, the ratio is over 90 to 1. So I think silver's been money for a long time, too. Silver works, and I think it's a good time for people to be buying it. But I'm trying to find some real strong points. I'm looking for people who think they've got something that I missed on Bitcoin, right? That's, again, what people say is, if Peter only knew more, if he only understood more, well, tell me what I'm missing. If there's something that I'm not getting. See, people keep saying, I'm old. I'm just an old fogey, and I don't know any better, that I should listen to the young kids who are buying it. Like, investment advice should be given, you know, should be taken from kids who have no experience. I mean, when you're saying that all these old people that have been around for 50, 60, 70 years, that have been through cycles, that have been through bubbles, they're the dumb ones. They don't get it. These kids that have never had anything, right? Kids that are just out of high school, right? College kids, just because they understand computers, I should take their advice on investing, right? Just because they, you know, they can, you know, navigate on a cell phone. You know, there's a problem when when all these seasoned professionals who have learned the lessons the hard way are saying one thing and you're just saying no. Because you know what? A lot of the young people today who are so arrogant, and that's you know, that's part of youth. That's what happens. People are arrogant when they're young. They think that they know everything, and that the older generation doesn't know anything. They're the first people that have done this. They don't trust them. Well, what happens is you make a lot of mistakes when you're young. And when you're older, you look back and you learn from those mistakes. At least you're supposed to, right? And so the mistakes that people are making now in Bitcoin will be valuable lessons. It's going to cost you a lot of money because you're going to lose money. But those bad decisions will help you make better decisions in the future. See, I've made those bad decisions like everybody else, right? I've lost money on doing things. But over time, you learn those lessons, and then you don't repeat the mistakes that you might have made when you were younger. So right now, young people are making mistakes. But for people that say that I should ignore what older, more experienced people are saying, tune that out and just pay attention to what the young people are saying, I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. All right, let me see. Another one. Bitcoin, BSV, not Bitcoin, is a digital commodity. The coins are rights over the commodity. It's cash first. All right, I don't even get that. Okay, whoever typed that in, Gan Van, how is it a digital commodity? And one of the things that's interesting too, and this is a point that Roy Sabag made that I hadn't even considered, because the government initially looked at cryptocurrencies and said, okay, they're commodities, right? That's how we're going to regulate them, even though they're not commodities that are registered. They're a commodity like gold or silver, right? And so you don't have to be registered to sell gold or silver. It's a commodity. It's not a security. The SEC has regulation over securities, and it didn't make any sense to me that Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency were a security. But after listening to the way Roy describes it, who is an active cryptocurrency miner and who knows a lot about what's going on, to me, I think the government can make a case that Bitcoin is a security and not a commodity. And if the government declares, the SEC declares it's a security, that's a whole lot of problems. Because if you think it's expensive to use Bitcoin now, wait do you see how much more it costs when it has to be registered as a security and blue skied in all the states, and when all the exchanges have to become broker dealers. I mean, I know, I operate a broker dealer. I know how expensive it is to do that, and all the regulatory costs with the SEC and FINRA. And they don't need, Congress doesn't have to do anything. Congress doesn't have to pass a law. The SEC just says it's a security, and that's it. And people say, well, that's just America. Believe me, if America does it, securities regulators all around the world are going to come to the same conclusion, because the government's never seen anything they didn't want to regulate. That's the problem with government. They want to regulate everything, right? The government wants power. The more power, the better. So if you're a regulatory body, you want to regulate as much as possible, because then you become more powerful. You get a bigger staff. You're in charge of more people, right? So if government can see a window of opportunity to declare Bitcoin a security so it can regulate the hell out of it, that's exactly what it's going to do. And that is a big risk. And that's what's coming. When you got President Trump and Mnuchin, believe me, they are coming up with some big regulatory their crackdown on these cryptos. And some of it too. They even Mnuchin said today he wants to make sure that when people buy Bitcoin, when investors buy Bitcoin, he understands the risks. He said that today. He wants people to know that, well, how do you do that? With regulation, compliance, disclosures, all that stuff is coming, right? Know your customer, suitability. I can see all this stuff coming when it comes to Bitcoin.
Eric Moore has a good question.
Where's Eric Moore? How do I see him?
Eric Moore, Bitcoin is a permanent on-chain massive data storage. I've put lots of uncensorable hypermedia and multimedia content permanently on the BSV blockchain. Also, somebody said, what about the value from the information storage?
Well, the information, I know, yes, Bitcoin stores all the information of all the transactions, which could be a positive, it could be a negative. Look, do you want a digital record of all your transactions? I mean, there are a lot of people that are doing things that they don't want other people to know about. I mean, I don't want every transaction I've ever made to be recorded somewhere. What if somebody can get into that and then somehow use it against me? So I think that's a liability as well as an asset, that you can record all this information so that you can make sure that all the coins are legit and there's no counterfeiting. But it's a double-edged sword. But again, just because the information can be stored, what kind of actual value does that create? Does that make a Bitcoin worth $10,000 or $1 million? Why isn't it worth $10? And people say, well, what about the proof of work, right? It takes a lot of value to create a Bitcoin. A lot of energy goes into the production of a Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin is the embodiment of that energy, but it's not, because I can't release that energy, right? Once, if I spend $5,000 in electricity to mine a Bitcoin, it's not like if I have that Bitcoin, I can get that energy back. The energy is gone. If I spend money to mine gold, now I have gold. I could do something with that gold of value. It could be used for something. So the energy wasn't wasted. It was converted into physical gold. The energy consumed to make Bitcoin is completely wasted because you've produced nothing, right? And the other part of it is you have to continuously expend energy to maintain the network. That network isn't just there. Without all the energy to validate all the transactions, you can't use it. Once gold is mined, you don't have to expend any more energy. It's there. It's there forever. The energy used to create gold, that gold will be here till the end of time, and you don't have to expend any more energy to do that. That's not the case with Bitcoin or any of these cryptocurrencies. Let me see. What's Paul? Do you see? Let me see. Do you see any good questions? Now I'm stuck here. See, okay, here is gold money going to stand up to government censorship? Well, it's very difficult when you're a publicly traded company and you got stockholders. I mean, unfortunately, the governments have a lot of power, and you can't the governments could put you out of business. So you kind of have to operate within the system as best you can. And I think that they're doing that. And one of the reasons, and I know people have said, Peter, I open up a gold money account and it takes too long and I have all this paperwork to fill out. Yeah, that's government. I mean, if it was up to gold money, all this would be instantaneous. The reason it's not instantaneous is because the government doesn't allow it. There's so much regulation going on now in the financial services industry. I mean, if government was not involved, this would be so simple. Everybody, we could all be using gold as money if governments were standing in the way. I mean, governments hate competition. We know that, right? And they don't want to have to compete with sound money. And so they erect these barriers to make it harder to do that. Because if people had a choice between using dollars or euros or gold, they would use gold every time. I mean, gold is obviously a far more reliable store of value and than any of these fiat currencies. And especially now, so the governments obviously have to erect these barriers to make it harder for gold because they don't want a level playing field, because on a level playing field, gold wins every time. Let me see here. I'm looking for, I can't scroll down. I'm just stuck. Oh, here I'm not. Okay. All right. I'm looking for some positive Bitcoin comments. Why are hyperinflated countries using Bitcoin? Well, they're not using Bitcoin. I mean, people in Venezuela. I mean, first of all, the people there make such a small amount of money to try to use a Bitcoin to buy something as a meaning exchange. It's almost impossible. But there's probably some people that maybe have bought Bitcoin, but they're smarter people are buying gold, but they're not using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. I mean, there's not that much going on other than in the black market. But that is a case, yes, where you could have a need where you're living in a situation where there is massive inflation. People are looking for alternatives. And I think more people are probably using dollars or euros than are using Bitcoin. But I'm sure there is some uses of Bitcoin, but I think the amount of it is being overblown. I think it's much smaller than people are claiming. It's not like they have a whole underground economy based on Bitcoin. That's not happening. But if we do have real hyperinflation in a major economy, not country like that, it's not going to be Bitcoin that everybody turns to. It's just they're not going to do that. They're going to use gold or our currency backed by gold. They're probably going to have to find a currency that they can have more confidence in. In fact, the dollar will probably, the only way to stop the decline in the dollar will be to reinstitute a peg to gold. Because if the confidence is lost in the dollar, how do you get it back? I mean, it's very hard to put that genie back in the bottle. And one of the ways that a lot of these countries in South America that have had problems with inflation, the way they stop it is then they peg their currency to gold. But then they have to make the peg believable. And usually people believe it for a while. And then once people believe it, then the government screws you over again. But the dollar, the U.S. is not going to be able to say, oh, well, we're going to peg the dollar to the euro. We're going to peg the dollar to the yen. That's not going to work. So the only thing that the dollar can be pegged to stop the loss of confidence and try to reinstill confidence would be to peg it to gold. And so ultimately, that is what's going to happen. I mean, the United States has been on a gold standard for most of its history. And that's going to be the case. And when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard, he said it was temporary. He probably didn't realize that it would be 50 years or more, but he was right. It will be temporary because we will go back on it. The question is when, and obviously the price of gold is going to be much, much higher when we do. The price of Bitcoin, anybody's guess, but it could be zero, right? And so I don't think it's a good wager to make. Bitcoin invented the piano key necktie. What did you produce? I don't get that. What is the piano key necktie? I don't know. I didn't invent anything. I've written some books, though. I think I've helped instill knowledge in people. A lot of people who actually bought Bitcoin, I guess I probably didn't help them, but people tell me that the reason they're in Bitcoin is because of me. Even though I never advocated that they buy it, they learned their economics from me, and it was their belief in economics and their distrust of government and fiat money that led them to buy Bitcoin. But I'm the one that got them to distrust it. So I think I've educated a lot of people. But yeah, no, I haven't invented things that have improved people's lives. I mean, yeah, I'm not Henry Ford or Thomas Edison. I've never claimed to be. Let me see. If you can't trust government to regulate fiat, how can you trust them to regulate gold? Look, I don't trust government, but that's why people buy gold. And again, the gold that you have in your own safe or buried in your backyard, the government is not going to get that. And you can have gold stored all around the world. Every country is not going to seize gold, right? It's not going to be universal. If one country does it, that doesn't mean every country will. And you put your gold in jurisdictions that are safe. And governments that are more likely to go rogue are governments that are in financial trouble, where they have a lot of debt, where they like the United States does, right? But if you have a sound economy where the governments are smaller and their fiscal house is in order, then they're less likely to take that kind of draconian measure. Let me see. So somebody here says Ripple is a game changer, period. All you've got to do is look at Ripple. I mean, again, that's the problem. Look at all these different cryptocurrencies, right? When people talk about, oh, Bitcoin is scarce, Bitcoin may be scarce, but the supply of digital currencies is not scarce, right? There's an infinite supply of digital currencies that can be created. Now, people will say, but Peter, gold's not scarce because there's other metals. Yes, there are other metals, but they're not gold. Gold actually has properties and can do things that other metals can't. That's not the case with one cryptocurrency. Yes, one cryptocurrency has a different name, and maybe people want it because they have more confidence in it than a name that they've never heard, right? But at the end of the day, there's no real difference substantively between cryptocurrencies in that they don't have any other use other than, as a supposed store of value or medium of exchange. But they have no separate use. But there are specific things that you can use gold for that if you try to substitute copper, it won't do it as well, or won't do it at all, that you need to have gold in order to make it work. So that is a difference that is meaningful. The difference between the cryptos is not. Let me see. Will the crypto markets disappear forever? Look, I do think that these fiat cryptocurrencies will go away. But depending on what happens in the future, before governments got monopolies on money, the private sector created money. And it was all backed by gold. I mean, banks all around the United States issued their own currency backed by gold that they had in their vaults. And that same thing can happen. I mean, what could happen if the governments let it happen? And, you can have cryptocurrencies backed by anything. I mean, obviously, it's easier to back them by gold. Gold is cheaper and easier to store. But to the extent that you can back your cryptocurrency by something, and it can even be backed by something intangible, that has value, that produces revenue streams. But if you have something real of value, separate from the fact that it's being used as a medium of exchange, and then you back your currency with it, there can be all sorts of currencies competing for trust in the marketplace, and people can decide which ones they want to use. That may happen. But what I don't think is going to happen is that any fiat cryptocurrency that's backed by absolutely nothing, that's just basically a faith-based digital asset with nothing of substance behind it, I think those are all going to go away. I think right now they're all the rage because the bubble is still inflating and the price is still rising. But once the whole thing implodes and people have lost a fortune and you have all the horror stories that replace all the get-rich-quick stories, then that's going to be the end of it. Let me see. I'm going to find it, another argument. I'm looking for the pro-Bitcoin arguments. Wait, stop it down. Stop it. Sure. Yeah, I mean, and I see a lot of questions on here that are not Bitcoin related. And as I said, I'm going to do, if people really like this, I mean, I want to see if I can figure out how to do something where people can actually talk. But I mean, if people like this format, I will do more of them. on other topics where people can ask me questions that have nothing to do with Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, or they can make statements. Again, I want statements too. I want people to, to make a point and let me try to refute it or think about it. Again, if you could say something that I've never heard before, that maybe it's like, oh, I missed that. I didn't think about that. That would be something that would be valuable. Here, this guy, I'm from Iran, although this guy is giving me 10 New Zealand dollars. But I can guarantee you that using Bitcoin to protect ourselves from inflation. In fact, every single person I can't read the rest of it. Wow. Paul, are you able to read this stuff? Because why does it get cut off?
Your screen's too small. Said he guarantees you. He guarantees everybody he knows in Tehran is using Bitcoin and holds Bitcoin, and they're using it to protect themselves from inflation in Iran.
Look, I don't know. So this guy is saying that all of his friends are using Bitcoin. That may be true. I mean, if that's the circle of friends that you have, that doesn't mean that everybody is using Bitcoin. But yes, Bitcoin has recently gone up in price, and that is a powerful inducement for some people to buy it. I'm not saying that people haven't got swept up in the mania. A lot of people have gotten swept up in it. So I have no doubt that there are some people who are buying it because they think they're buying a store of value. Now, of course, they actually think the value is going to go up. I mean, see, if you buy something thinking it's going to go way up, you're not really buying it as a store of value. You're buying it as a speculative asset. You see, when Powell, basically tried to say the reason that people are buying Bitcoin is they're buying a speculative store of value, that's really a contradiction in terms. You don't speculate and store value at the same time, right? If you're speculating, it's because you're trying to increase your value. Now, right now, I actually think the price of gold is too low. I think it's a store of value, but not enough people are buying it. So I do think that the price is going to go up. But even if it doesn't go up, I would buy it just to store value because I believe the price of everything else relative to gold will go down. But if people that are buying Bitcoin now and they think it's going to go to $1 million a coin, and now it's 10,000, and you're looking for 100-fold increase, you're not storing something. You're trying to get something that you didn't have. Right? You're not trying to preserve your wealth. You're using Bitcoin as a vehicle to attain wealth. So most of the people who are buying it don't think they're storing value, even if they want to describe it that way. But if you've got a currency that's collapsing in value, even if Bitcoin goes down slower, you're still storing some value. But I think if people really just want to store value, there are other things that they can buy that are a lot less volatile than Bitcoin. So if they're buying Bitcoin, they're looking for something more than a store of value. They're looking for a lottery ticket that they think is a sure winner, right? They don't even think people are buying it. A lot of the people, they think there's no way they're going to lose. They're so convinced that this is it, that they've stumbled on the new thing. And that's the other thing. People still are trying to say that buy it now because you're getting in early. I mean, that is the biggest crock. Getting in early, you are not getting in early when the president of the United States tweets that he doesn't like Bitcoin, when the chairman of the Federal Reserve is talking about Bitcoin, when CNBC is practically dedicated to covering Bitcoin, you're not getting in on the ground floor. It's all out there. The news is out there. Believe me, anybody who wants to buy Bitcoin, I think they've already bought it. The idea that this is the ground floor, it isn't even close to the ground floor. That was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, right? Everybody knows about it, right? Now, everybody hasn't bought it. Now, people say, well, only 1% of the people have bought it. So that leaves the other 99%. That's nonsense. The other 99% aren't going to buy it. 1%, 2%, that's a lot of people. A lot of people know about it and own it, and a lot of people know about it and don't own it. And believe me, the people who watch Bitcoin go to 20,000 and who didn't buy it aren't going to buy it now. In fact, the people who are buying Bitcoin now are people who already own it. They're people that are using leverage now to buy more, right? They're not expanding the market. You're not getting new suckers. The greater fools are already in. The bag holders are already there. That's why look at Google and do a search and look at Bitcoin as a search term. You're barely seeing an increase. I mean, there's far fewer people searching for Bitcoin than there were a year and a half ago. Well, if you constantly need the price to go up and you constantly need new buyers, it's obviously not happening. The wave has stopped, but people are in denial.
If gold is used for money, its value will be higher than if it was purely used as metal. Isn't this extra value in a sense fiat like Bitcoin?
Okay. So somebody is saying that right now, since gold is not used as money, that monetary value is not in the price. And therefore, the only aspects that are currently in gold's price are its non-monetary properties. And yeah,
its value is higher than if it was
metal. So when gold is remonetized, the price will, by definition, go up because now there's more demand for gold because gold will be used as money again. Now, it's still used to a limited extent. Central banks own about 20% of the world's gold. And so that is part of the gold demand. That supply is off the market. But yes, investors have not been using gold as a monetary anchor in their portfolio, as an inflation hedge. They will in the future. And I think central banks need to own more gold. They have too much currency in their reserves and not enough real money. So yes, as the demand for gold goes up, so too will its price. That's one of the reasons I think gold is undervalued. But here is the key. When the price of gold, let's say the price of gold goes up to, $5,000. They're still going to make gold jewelry. Demand for gold in jewelry is not going to go away because the price goes up. Jewelry just might get more expensive. And items may contain less gold in them than they do now, right? But gold will still be used. Gold will still be in cell phones because it's such a small part of a cell phone that even if the price triples or quadruples, they're still going to buy it. So, it's still going to be used in dentistry, no matter how high the price goes. So if the monetary demand for gold drives the price higher, the real demand is still going to be there. That's always going to be there, maintaining a market outside of its monetary properties. But yes, I do think that because gold has not been serving the role of money, because people have misplaced their confidence in governments, yes, that has taken some value out of the price of gold, and that value will return to gold once it is remonetized, once people realize that they made a mistake trusting government, and it's better to trust gold. And that's one of the reasons I own it now. That's why I own mining stocks. That's why I own silver as well, because I believe that when they are remonetized, it will be at a much higher price, because there's no way to monetize gold at the current price. It's impossible. The price has to go up to make it work. But that's fine, because people will just have less gold. It doesn't matter how high the price of gold is. The economy can still adjust. Prices will adjust based on the supply of gold and the price of gold. But again, people want to act as if I only own gold. I don't. Gold's a part of my portfolio. I am very well diversified, and I recognize that I don't look at gold as an alternative to owning stocks or owning real estate, rental property, or I look at gold as an alternative to paper money. So to the extent that you want to keep some cash, that you don't want to buy stocks, if you think stocks are expensive and you're waiting for them to go down, or you don't want to buy real estate, you're waiting for it to go down, you want to keep some liquidity, I think you're much better off keeping your liquidity in gold, in real money, than what the government is passing off as it's counterfeit money. It's fiat. And so, but I think people are making the same mistake if they're putting their trust in Bitcoin, even if Bitcoin has gone up. The fact that it's already gone up doesn't mean it's going to work. It simply means that more people believe it's going to work, but they could be wrong. A lot of people bought a bunch of .com stocks and thought they were smart because they bought the stock at 10 and it went to 100. Well, when it went to 0 and they still owned it, that doesn't mean they were right when it was at 10. It just means that more people were wrong after they were, and they were willing to pay an even higher price. And, I made a mistake in not recognizing the bubble potential of Bitcoin, and I didn't buy in when it was real cheap. But other people are making a mistake of not cashing out, right? You can make a mistake by not getting in early, but you make a bigger mistake by not getting out, because a lot of people that bought some Bitcoin when it was really cheap have bought more on the way up. And ultimately, when it collapses, they're going to end up losing money. Even though they'll have some coins that are at a profit, their average price would have gone up because they bought more into the bubble. And then when it pops, they're just left holding the bag. So I think that people who are not selling at the end of the day are making a much bigger mistake than I did by not buying. Of course, the people that played it perfectly are the people who bought and got out, or the people that are still getting out. That's, again, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes with the big pumpers, the whales, how they manipulate the price and try to, create fake volume and pump up the price so they can sell in, right? They want to sucker in new buyers. There can be a lot of sham transactions going around to get the price up, to sucker in new money so the guys that were scamming can dump out, right? This is all a game, and you don't know what's going on.
The internet was invented 46 years ago in the 70s. Look up TCP/IP technology. It was invented decades before normal people started using it. Does it have value?
Yeah, okay, I've heard this argument. I don't know if anybody, can anybody hear Paul? Paul, when you talk, are you being heard? All right, so I got somebody here that's helping me out. But so somebody is basically saying that, the internet technology, the ITCP, what is it? TCP/IP, yeah, TCP/IP. But yeah, that protocol was invented and it has value, and so Bitcoin can have value too. Look, there's a big difference there. I mean, the reason that the internet has value is because of what other people have put onto the internet, right? The internet by itself has no value to anybody. What's valuable is the fact that I am now doing things. I'm using the internet right now to communicate through YouTube, right? But what gives the value is YouTube, is the company of YouTube. Without YouTube, the internet would mean nothing. If you had an internet that nobody invented new things to put on top of it, to utilize it, to generate income and revenue, then it wouldn't matter. I mean, when you buy Bitcoin, when you own a Bitcoin, you don't own some valuable asset. I mean, you don't own that blockchain. You don't own the protocol. You just have that one coin. It's like if I buy a car, just because my car goes on the highway, I don't have any ownership in that highway just because I use the highway when I drive my car. I mean, my car is a depreciating asset. I mean, so the idea that it's a technology, so it has some kind of value, and people say that I think Bitcoin has no value because it's intangible and therefore it doesn't have value. I don't say that. I mean, software is intangible. Music is intangible. A video, a movie is intangible, right? But it has value because it can improve my life. Software can make my life easier. It can make me more productive, right? People write software and it has a purpose. Bitcoin doesn't make my life better or easier. I mean, no more than any other cryptocurrency in theory could do, but a specific software program that somebody designed can do that. Music, I can listen to music. I can enjoy it. It can change my mood. I can dance to it. I can sing to it, right? It's pleasing to me. So it's intangible, but it has tangible value because it actually interacts with me and affects me in the real world. That doesn't happen with Bitcoin, right? So just because I don't say it has no value because it's intangible. I say it doesn't have any value because it doesn't have any tangible properties. It doesn't affect the real world. Now, yes, but I can exchange it. I can give it to somebody. Yes, so what? You could do that with any cryptocurrency. Just because, and it's scarce. Scarcity means nothing without value. An original Peter Schiff painting is rare. I don't, I mean, I can paint something and it can be very rare, but does anybody want to buy it? Because I'm not a very good painter, so it might not have any value. No one cares that it's scarce. It has to be scarce and valuable. It has to be worth something. So let me try. So yeah, what gives something value is if something is scarce and also uniquely valuable, well, then that scarcity is important. But something that no one wants, if it's scarce, it doesn't matter. So if the demand for Bitcoin goes away, it doesn't matter if there's only one Bitcoin. If nobody wants it, then it's worth nothing.
Derek Morrison again, for about $7, I can permanently store a video of myself on the Bitcoin SV blockchain. My video is retrievable forever. My descendants can watch.
All right, somebody said that they can store a video on the Bitcoin blockchain. Well, do you have to own a Bitcoin to do that? And why can't I just store a video on YouTube? I mean, I don't understand. How am I storing a video on the blockchain?
Well, YouTube has to pay to store your video, so there's value there. But the blockchain, as long as it exists, that information is stored in the blockchain.
But how if I decided to upload a video onto the blockchain, how does somebody access that video? How does somebody watch it? And do you have to own the Bitcoin? I mean, are you the only one that can watch it? Or how many Bitcoins do I have to have? Can I buy just one Satoshi and store a video forever? Or do I have to have an entire Bitcoin? I mean, none of it even makes sense.
That was Derek Moore again.
So somebody would have, that was Derek Moore. Someone's going to have to educate me a little bit more on how exactly you store a video on the blockchain and why owning the Bitcoin itself is somehow the toll that you have to pay to be able to store it. And, and if I can store it, how many Bitcoins do I need to store it? I mean, if I have one Satoshi, can I store 1,000 videos on it?
It's Bitcoin SV. So Bitcoin.
Oh, now you're talking about SV. So it's not Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin SV is its value is the ability to store data immutably on chain. You pay miners a small fee to store your information.
Well, maybe there's some value there to Bitcoin SV if it could do something, but what is that value? And what's to stop some other coin from, competing and offering a similar service at a lower price? The whole idea that, that the way I get access to it is to buy the coin. I mean, I would rather just pay a fee to a service than have to buy an overpriced coin and somehow get the service for free. But the risk is that I bought this coin that's going to collapse in value when I could have paid a much more nominal price to actually do that. I mean, a lot of these cryptocurrencies that are being created that supposedly have a use, it would actually be much better for whoever is providing that service to just charge for it. When they try to put this crypto wrapper on it, it kind of is a scam. And what they're trying to do is exact seigniorage, like something for nothing. Like they're trying to create this cryptocurrency that people think is going to go up. Because when you create the cryptocurrency yourself, it costs you nothing. To the extent that you can create something for nothing and have people buy it, that's like you're a counterfeiter. If you could just run off money and create value out of nothing, see, that's the problem. You can't create something from nothing. Gold is money because it has real value, right? Nobody created it. It was there. But you can't just take out of thin air, just make a Bitcoin out of thin air, and it has all this value. I just create. That's why when Donald Trump said its value is based out of thin air, yeah, it's thin air. I mean, the funniest thing, I don't know if anybody hasn't seen it, go on YouTube. We're on YouTube, obviously, right now, and look for my video, Peter Schiff Bitcoin with Sesame Street. And what I did is I took this old Sesame Street skit, which I remember from when I was a kid, when this this guy, Lefty, always wants to sell Ernie something. He always wants to scam him out of his money. And there was one episode where he's trying to get Ernie to buy some air. And he's got it in a bottle, and he gets Ernie to buy air for a nickel. And that skit made me think of Bitcoin and all the people that are out there trying to get people to buy Bitcoin when they're just buying air. So watch that. It's funny. I mean, even people who like Bitcoin laugh at it. But, let it sink in, because, I mean, it's funny for a reason. It's funny because it's true. Let me see. I don't know. My son texted me. I don't know if he was trying to send me some kind of message that I'm doing. Oh, he said that he had to stop watching, that it's a bad format. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope that people are getting value out of it, because if my own son had to stop watching because he said he didn't like the format, huh? Oh, well, no, I just saw he sent me a text. But I don't know. People can let them know. I mean, I don't know how this compares to what other people are doing with live streaming on YouTube. Because, again, I've never participated in one. It's not what I thought it was going to be. And I may try to see if there's a way to make it more interactive so we can have more real interaction and debate. But I'm trying to do the best that I can. Here's
the reason why you want to store something on the blockchain is it's guaranteed to be there forever, unlike YouTube, which has the power to remove your videos. And it's just ones and zeros. Data is ones and zeros, just like the video.
Well, I don't know. So somebody is saying that if I store something on the blockchain, it's going to be there forever. Well, I mean, assuming that chain is going to be there forever, assuming the people who are maintaining the chain are going to be there forever, that they're going to continue to expend the resources. And I think obviously they won't. I mean, to the extent that if the price collapses to the point where the people can't make any money, maintain the network, then the network's going to go away. I mean, that's what you have to assume, because you have to have these third parties that are able to generate the revenue to provide these services, because there's a cost. They can't provide it for nothing. But again, I think I'm putting this stuff on the internet, on YouTube, and I don't pay YouTube anything. I don't spend any money to have my videos on YouTube. And I have confidence, more confidence, that Bitcoin is going to be in business. I mean, that YouTube is going to be in business in 50 or 100 years. I mean, yeah, or somebody who would have bought out YouTube. I mean, I think the videos that are being put on the internet today are going to be there. There'll be some way they're going to be there. But I don't know about the ones that are put on these blockchains, because who knows if these blockchains, you think they're going to be there, but it may not. But I think all this is about just trying to create some kind of value. And then, of course, even I see all these real pure Bitcoin evangelists that say all these other coins are shit coins. It's not just Nero Rubini that calls them shit coins. And people think that all the other coins are going to collapse and Bitcoin's going to be the only one that's left. And, and then there are some people know that this coin is better or that coin is better. That's the problem. And, if Litecoin or EOS or, or Ether, any of these coins can collapse and go to zero, then so could Bitcoin, right? That's going to be the message. If it can happen to one of them, it can happen to all of them. Because when I hear people that like one cryptocurrency criticizing the other one, it's like, well, the same thing can be said about the one that you like, but they don't see the fault. They only see the faults in the cryptos that they don't own. But they see the faults in the ones they don't own, and they ignore the same faults in the ones that they do own. It's a bias, a confirmation bias. And I know people want to accuse me of having the same bias because, oh, I like gold. Look, believe me, there are people that like gold and Bitcoin. So just because you like gold doesn't mean that you can't like Bitcoin, because there are plenty of people that like both. Now, there are some people that don't think Bitcoin is going to work. I happen to be one of them. And, so far, nothing that I've seen on this has changed my mind. Although part of it could be the fact that the format isn't giving all you Bitcoiners a good enough chance to really, kind of, put these big arguments out in front of me. But I'm looking for them. I'm trying my best. Here's a guy saying, "Hi, Peter. Bitcoin is an idea whose time has come. I've lived in San Juan for a few years now. I've always wondered what's my favorite restaurant in Dorado." Look, I mean, I don't know. I eat at the hotel restaurants mostly because I don't really get out of my little bubble there in the compound. So maybe, I don't know if it's maybe Koa or Positivo. But I generally don't get out. I've eaten in some other restaurants there in Dorado as well, and I've gone into San Juan. But look, I give you an example. The Bitcoin that I had in my wallet, right? I had like $50 worth of Bitcoin that I got from Eric Voorhees. And I was in Fire Island one weekend, shortly after I got that Bitcoin. And in Fire Island, if you've ever been there, a lot of these merchants don't take credit cards. They all just take cash, right? And so I was hoping to find somebody. I wanted to spend the Bitcoin. I wanted to take my Bitcoin from my phone and just use it to buy something. So I didn't have to just use cash, because nobody was taking credit cards. And I couldn't find a single merchant that would take my Bitcoin. Now, maybe there's one now that would do it. It was only, what was it? Not even a couple of years ago. But nobody wanted it. Nobody would take it. I said, well, can I give you some Bitcoin? No. So I couldn't find anybody. They all wanted my cash, but they didn't take any Bitcoin. But let me see. Let me find Peter, don't you want to put 10% of your net worth in crypto? What's the worst thing that can happen? Well, I lose 10% of my net worth, I guess. But, the other thing that can happen is if I take 10% of my net worth and I put it in crypto, what is the opportunity cost? See, not only could I lose 10% of my net worth by putting it into crypto, but what if I put that 10% of my net worth into something else that I think is going to go way up? So it's the opportunity cost, not just the money I lose, but the opportunity I lose. But I know this idea, like if you already own crypto, right, and you want the price to go way up, if you can convince everybody to put 1% of their net worth into it, then it's a home run for you, because you sell out, right? Because if people can only buy Bitcoin from the people who have it to sell, right? There's a little bit mining, but the majority of the Bitcoins that will ever exist already exist. Right? Most of the 21 million have already been mined. So to the extent that new people are going to buy, they have to buy from the people that already have it. So if you already have Bitcoin, you want more people to buy. And so, yes, you want to get everybody, well, just put 1% in, 2% in. What the hell? right? I look at that. I'm just providing an exit strategy. I'm just letting the guy who got in early cash out because I decided to take a gamble. He convinced me to throw a small percent of my net worth out it so he can cash out of his net worth, right? And make a bunch of money off of my expense. I mean, that's why I think too, a lot of people in Bitcoin, they get mad at me because I'm not pro Bitcoin, because they want everybody to be pro Bitcoin because they need the price to go up. Everybody who owns Bitcoin needs that price to go up. They're betting on the price to go up. They don't like it when somebody doesn't get it, right? And so the whole thing is like a cult, and they have all this terminology. See, I guess I would be a non-coiner, except I'm not a non-coiner because I have some coins. But the amount that I have is so immaterial that it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. I mean, the money, the Bitcoin I have in my wallet, if it goes to 0, I don't care. And if it goes to 1 million, I still don't care. Although I guess if it goes to 1 million, the reason I would care is because in theory, I mean, the only way, if Bitcoin actually went that high, it would mean that other assets would have to lose a lot of value in terms of purchasing power. Because remember, the people who are hodling Bitcoin, they are not creating any products or services, right? You're not adding any value to society just by holding a Bitcoin. So to the extent that Bitcoin becomes more valuable, it's simply at the expense of something else, because Bitcoin would represent, if it actually went up, it would represent a claim on other assets. You could use it to bid up the price of stocks or real estate or houses or whatever. But that would be at the expense of somebody else. So if Bitcoin really goes up, it's basically going to be, sucking up the purchasing power that currently exists in euros and dollars and yen, which would be transferred to the owners of Bitcoin. So all the people who are holding on to these currencies would end up being broke, and all these young kids that now have, their, small amounts of money in Bitcoin would be rich because they would have all the purchasing power. Now, real assets, they would still be here, but the claims to those assets would transfer from fiat sovereign currencies to Bitcoin, which I don't see there's any chance of that actually happening. It's a pipe dream.
A bunch of people have mentioned that intrinsic value is straight out of Marx. This guy says Austrian economics.
Yeah.
Austrian economists believe intrinsic value is antithetical to this objective.
Yeah. Okay, so people are making the point, I've heard, this is not a new argument, because when they say, well, nothing has intrinsic value, again, that's just not true, right? Things have value. I mean, it's quantifiable that something has value. I mean, what that value is can differ, because certain people can value something more than other people. But the fact that something physical or even intangible has value, right? I mean, because somebody could, can compose a song that I hate, and so therefore it has no value to me because I don't like to listen to it because it's not good, but somebody else could enjoy it. I suppose if somebody wrote a song that nobody in the world liked, then maybe that song would have no value. But songs can have value because somebody can appreciate it, somebody can like it, right? And gold has value. And people say, well, gold only has value because people believe it has value. No, people believe it has value because it has value, because they could use it for all sorts of things. It's not like I'm just accepting something. It's there. I can see the evidence of its value in all the things that it's used for today and all the things that it's been used for in the past. Whatever you could take gold and you could make, utensils out of it. I mean, people have, a gold fork or a gold spoon. So I'm using that gold to eat. Now, could I make silverware out of something else? Yes. And they do. But if you want to have something really formal, or you make it out of real silver, right? So why do you think they call silverware silver? Because it's made out of silver. Now, do most people have silverware that's made out of real silver that they use every day? No, but they have their good silver when they have company over, they want to impress them. Well, if you want to have a really nice set, you could have flatware made out of gold. They do that. I mean, people have toilet bowls made out of gold. Now, can you make a toilet bowl out of porcelain? Yeah, of course. But I mean, if you're really rich and you got more money there to do it, you make yourself a toilet bowl. So you're using it. You're sitting on the seat, right? It's actually being utilized for something. Even if you can use something cheaper, sometimes people want to be extravagant, right? And so there's always value. When I hear people have to try to convince me that gold has no value in order to convince me that Bitcoin does, it just makes them lose the argument even more because they look that much more foolish when you have these people coming out and saying that gold has no use, right? Which is complete nonsense. Of course it has use. But, people have to advance that argument to try to rationalize why Bitcoin has value, which it doesn't. But then they have to pretend that gold has no value when it does. Let me see. What's the next question?
Eric Kren says, Hey, Peter, here's a quote from you from episode 176 that proves you're wrong. 176 on your podcast.
All right, somebody is saying that one of my own podcasts, I proved myself wrong. Okay, so can I see that question on here somewhere? I don't know where this guy is, but Paul's going to read this question. Do we still have? I mean,
he said fiat money could work in theory if it were not for politicians expanding money supply to fund deficits. Bitcoin solved.
Okay, so here this guy's making a point that I said in theory, fiat money could work if governments could be trusted to limit the supply. And that would be true, except you can't trust governments to limit the supply. Now, the supply of Bitcoin is limited to 21 million, but as I said, the supply of alternatives to Bitcoin is unlimited. So just because you have a limited supply of one fiat currency, one digital currency, the fact that you have an unlimited supply of competing digital currencies means that it's not really scarce. And especially when you have the currency itself forks off and becomes Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Gold and Bitcoin SV or whatever you've got. But again, there's another important part that people forget in a fiat currency, something that makes it work. The government not only declares that it is legal tender, but it demands that taxes be paid in that currency. And that's what gives it value, because the government has the force, they have the guns, and they can put you in jail. So the government says every year you've got to pay your income taxes, or you have to pay property tax, whatever it is. And the only thing that we will accept is dollars, paper dollars. So that means that at the end of the day, if you want to stay out of jail, you need to accumulate dollars to give them to the government. That is not the case with Bitcoin, right? Now, here's an example that I use to describe this, because it doesn't have that value. Let's say I'm a bully in a school playground, and I go and I tell kids, look, give me $5, and I'm going to give you a little piece of paper, and I'm going to put my signature on it. And if you have this piece of paper, if I see you and you show it to me, I won't beat you up, right? But if you don't have this paper, I'm going to kick the crap out of you, right? Well, the paper doesn't actually have any value, right? It's just a piece of paper with some idiot's signature on it. But if I know that if I have that piece of paper, this kid's not going to kick my ass, well, that paper has value, right? And I can actually exchange it, because there could be somebody else that doesn't want the bully to kick his ass, and he would give me something of value for that piece of paper, so we can carry it around. Because whenever the bully confronts you, you better have that piece of paper, or you're going to get your ass kicked, right? So a bully can take something that has no value and give value, because the value is you don't get beat up. And so the way that dollars have value is that, well, I don't go to jail. The government doesn't lock me up. It doesn't seize my property, because I have the currency, because I can give it back to the government. So that's the other thing that creates this value of fiat currency. And then, of course, it also has the value in that it's been a medium of exchange. You have prices denominated in it, contracts, insurance policies, rental agreements. The whole society is wrapped up in a fiat currency. And of course, it doesn't have the big daily volatility. So Bitcoin is not going to work. I mean, if in theory, if Bitcoin was the only cryptocurrency that could ever exist, and governments were to give up their sovereignty and say that all our taxes are going to be in Bitcoin, right? And governments are going to give up their central banks, and they're going to let individuals, yes, we're accepting taxes, not like with BitPay, right? That doesn't count. I mean, there's some states, right, that say you can pay your taxes with Bitcoin, but you really can't, right? I mean, people make this mistake all the time with me and Schiff Gold, right? On my website, Schiff Gold, we partnered up with BitPay years ago, and BitPay allows us to say, hey, we accept Bitcoins. You can buy gold with Bitcoins, right? And that was part of the marketing scam to get people to think that people were actually spending Bitcoin and transacting in Bitcoin. They're not doing that, right? What happens is BitPay is a service. And what they do, if you want to buy gold from Schiff Gold and you want to sell your Bitcoin in order to get the dollars to buy gold, you can do that through BitPay. Now, you can do it yourself, right? You can just sell your Bitcoin, through an exchange and get the money yourself, or you can use BitPay. And what they do is, if you want to buy, let's say, $10,000 worth of gold from Schiff Gold, and you have $10,000 worth of Bitcoin in your wallet, you work through BitPay and you sell them, or you transfer to them your Bitcoin. They sell the Bitcoin for you, and they get the gold, and then they take they get the dollars, and then they take the dollars and they pay for gold. So they kind of make it easy for you to get rid of your Bitcoin to get the dollars so you can buy gold. That's the same thing that states would do that would accept a payment in taxes in terms of Bitcoin. Because at Schiff Gold, we could never actually sell gold for Bitcoin because our margins are only about 1%. Well, the price of Bitcoin can fluctuate by more than 1% in 5 minutes. So if we try to negotiate a sale in Bitcoin, by the time we actually got rid of the Bitcoin, we could actually end up losing money on the transaction. And we're not in business to lose money. We have to make money on every transaction. And we can't do that if we're gambling with the money that we're getting paid in. So we can't accept Bitcoin. But what we can do is make it easier for people who have Bitcoin to get rid of it, to get the money that we can accept. And that's the same thing that would be going on, with the states. But the government actually takes dollars. And and that's where somebody made a big deal on the internet, because on one of the debates I think I did on YouTube, I mentioned that people aren't getting paid salaries in Bitcoin. And people said, oh, Peter Schiff is wrong. Look, here's some people that are taking their salaries in Bitcoin. They're not. They're basically taking a salary in dollars, but they're allowing their employer to convert their dollars to Bitcoin each payday. So let's say they're taking a job and they're making $1,000 a week. When their paycheck is due, they're saying, okay, take my $1,000 and buy me however much of a Bitcoin you can, and then pay me in it, right? They're not saying I'm going to work for 1/10 of a Bitcoin a week and that's my salary, because no one's going to take a salary that's locked in Bitcoin, and no employer is going to agree to a salary that's locked in Bitcoin, because it could go way up. It could go way up. It could go way down. You don't know. When you're negotiating salaries, you need certainty. Employees need certainty because they have to match their income with their expenses, because their landlord doesn't want Bitcoin, the grocery store doesn't want Bitcoin, the gas station doesn't want Bitcoin, right? So they need payment. But if you're also an employer, you need to make sure that you're paying, because you're buying labor from somebody. And if I'm hiring somebody and I'm paying them $1,000 a week, they have to be delivering more than $1,000 a week worth of productivity, or I wouldn't be hiring them. But I can't take the risk that Bitcoin goes up and then I end up paying them more for their services than the value they're providing. So both the employers and the employees need a certainty when it comes to negotiating a salary, which is why they can't negotiate salaries in Bitcoin. Now, can someone decide when their paycheck is due, hey, send me the equivalent of Bitcoin today? Yes, some people can do that. But that doesn't mean people are getting salaries in Bitcoin. They're not. People aren't buying life insurance policies where it payoff is in Bitcoin. Because who knows? I may die and my family gets nothing. I don't know what Bitcoin is going to be worth. You need some certainty in value, right? I mean, people aren't loaning. You think people are lending people money in Bitcoin? Hey, let me borrow 1,000 Bitcoins and I'll pay you back 1,000 Bitcoins in 5 years. I mean, what kind of interest do you charge on a loan like that? Nobody is willing to make the loan because there's too much risk on both sides of the transaction. So, it doesn't work as money. Let me see. What do I got here? Someone's saying I caused Bitcoin to go down by $200. Whatever the price of Bitcoin is doing, it's got nothing to do with what I'm saying here. I mean, that's for sure.
Bitcoin's value comes from the fact that people value their privacy. has value in a place like the dark web? Doesn't that
Okay.
have value?
So somebody is making the point that the value of Bitcoin is the fact that you can transact privately. And when I first heard about it, that is one of the things that I actually thought was appealing about it, is the fact that, I know from being in the banking business that there's all sorts of government eyes, peering into our every transaction. And that isn't the way it used to be in the olden days. There was privacy and secrecy. And I think that is better. I don't like it when the government knows everything that you do, because that is a bad situation. See, the government wants us to think that it's bad if we have privacy, because people can do bad things with their privacy, right? People can trade in drugs or terrorism or stuff like that, which is true. But that's always the case when you're talking about freedom, right? People can always abuse freedom. Freedom of speech can be abused, because when you have freedom of speech, people can say hurtful things. People can say hateful things. People can say things that you don't agree with. But that doesn't mean you eliminate free speech. You have to defend free speech. So just because some people will abuse their financial privacy doesn't mean we eliminate the right to financial privacy. Because here is the risk. Once the government has outlawed financial privacy, that is a tyrannical situation. Because even if a government today is a benevolent government, it could become an oppressive government. And now, if it can see what everybody is doing, it can make sure that it maintains that oppression, and it maintains that power. Because let's say the government is the bad guy, which happens all the time. Governments become corrupt, right? They become evil. And now the people who you might think are terrorists are actually freedom fighters. They're patriots. They're trying to restore liberty. They're trying to fight a tyrannical government. Well, it's harder to do that if there's no financial secrecy, if you have no privacy. If the government knows exactly where all your money is, then you cannot organize a resistance against a corrupt government. So in order to keep government honest, and in order to maintain the ability of the population to be able to resist and fight back tyranny, I am willing to live with the fact that some people will launder money and some people might use it for terrorism, because I don't want to give up my liberty to get that extra security, because I'll lose both, right? And I didn't make this up. I'm quoting smarter patriots than me. But that is an appeal. But the problem is, Bitcoin actually doesn't have all that privacy. There are other cryptocurrencies that are actually far more private than Bitcoin. So if you're really concerned about privacy, Bitcoin is not the currency that you're going to use. But there is a value in, I do believe that criminals, to the extent that they think that Bitcoin is anonymous, they are willing to use it because they don't care if the value drops by 10 or 20% between the time they get it and the time they spend it, because that's actually cheap for money laundering. See, normally, let's say you're a criminal and I earned a bunch of cash, right? And I got all this money in a briefcase and I want it to be laundered somehow. Well, normally you pay points, right? Maybe in order to launder, $1 million of drug money, by the time I send it through the system, I may only have 600,000 left. I may end up having to pay all the people that helped me launder it 40% of what I earned, right? I mean, so people who have to launder money know that there is a cost to be paid. So if I'm going to transact in Bitcoin, even if the price of Bitcoin drops 20 or 30% between the time I get it and the time I turn around and spend it, hey, that's not bad, right? Because the money got laundered. But the problem is it's not working. And here is another thing. And this is, a problem. In order for Bitcoin to go more mainstream, because that's what Bitcoin needs, right? In order to get more buying in, they need to appeal to investors. They need to get the investing public. They want to get institutions in. In order to do that, they need more regulation. I keep hearing people in Bitcoin saying, we need more government regulation. That's going to make the market better. That destroys the very appeal that Bitcoin had initially, right? That's another contradiction. Like, I remember one of the things that people used to tell me about Bitcoin and gold back in the day, years ago. They would say, Peter, I don't want to buy gold because it's manipulated. They have futures contracts, and these people can manipulate the price of gold in the futures market. And so one of the reason I want to buy Bitcoin is because it doesn't have a futures market. And so it can't be manipulated, right? Well, now it has a futures market. And you know what everybody was saying? Oh, a futures market is good for Bitcoin. This legitimizes it. This makes it more mainstream. This means more people can invest. It means more people can hedge. So in other words, not having a futures contract was good, but then having a futures contract was also good. Heads I win, tails you lose. You can't have it both ways. Again, but all the stuff that Bitcoin has to do to try to appeal to government regulators and the mainstream, it has to sacrifice the very qualities that was the initial source of its appeal for the libertarian free market guys that saw this as a solution to these government problems. Someone's asking me, what's the intrinsic value of my shirt? Well, because if I didn't have my shirt, I'd be sitting here, half naked. I don't know how many people just want to stare at my body. And so, to the extent that, that is saving me some embarrassment, there's some intrinsic value there. I don't know. I mean, if it was a little cold, my shirt would have the intrinsic value of providing me with warmth. But it also can look good. I mean, it can have the value of giving me some style and making me look a little better. I mean, maybe that can help me in life. I mean, certainly people who are single, who are looking to attract members of the opposite sex, it helps to look good. People, value that. But even in business, I mean, people will value appearance and the way people are dressed and the clothes that they wear and the style that they have may say something about them. So there's a lot of intrinsic value in clothing. There's intrinsic value in brands. Obviously, I'm wearing a polo shirt. I mean, I could wear a shirt that was made not by Ralph Lauren that maybe would look similar and that would have been cheaper. But there's some extra value that is ascribed by consumers to brands. That's why companies want to create them. I mean, it certainly look at women's handbags. I mean, you could find a handbag. Women could pay $5,000, $10,000 for a handbag, and you can buy one for $100. It'll carry just as much stuff. But people, they've created a brand, they've created a market, and they've cultivated it. And there are people that want to buy those status symbols, and they're willing to pay. And the value is the status that they believe they have and the way they feel about themselves. I mean, it's you buy something that makes you feel good. What's the value of that? I mean, that's, we're not here indefinitely. And so we need to do things that make our lives better, make us feel better. But again, none of this, Bitcoin doesn't accomplish any of this. I mean, does it make people feel better? Yes, because they think they're going to get rich because they just think the price of Bitcoin is going to go up. Well, they're not going to feel better when the price comes crashing down and they've lost.
They're bringing up Mises and Menger again, or Menger, whatever you say it. But they're saying that's not intrinsic value, that's utility that you're bringing up on your shirt.
Okay, so if you're going to try to say that the concept of intrinsic value and utility are different, then I can say gold has utility and Bitcoin has none, right? The utility of a commodity or of anything is what you can use it for, right? What you can do with it, right? And I think in order for you to be money, in order for you to be a store of value, you have to have a utility beyond functioning as a medium of exchange. You have to actually have demand in the real world. Bitcoin doesn't have that, right? I keep hearing Bitcoin has utility because you can use it. That is not the utility. Using it as a medium of exchange is not utility. It's what you can do with it when you're not using it as a medium of exchange. And by the way, gold, as I said, gold works beautifully as a medium of exchange, better than Bitcoin, right? Because you don't have to trade the actual bar of gold, the actual ounce of gold. When the first paper money was created that was backed by gold, it was a convenience. It was more convenient. I kept my gold at a goldsmith. He stored it, and I had an IOU from a trusted goldsmith, which became a bank. And so I could negotiate the paper claims to my gold without actually having to go back and forth to the vault every time I wanted it. What people used for transactions were lower quality metals. Pennies were made of copper. Nickels were made of nickel. Dimes, quarters were made of silver, right? And so, gold was for more expensive transactions. That's the way it could be again. But as I said at the beginning of this whole thing, the internet, the ability to have your gold stored and then digitally broken down into grams and transferred instantaneously anywhere in the world for free, that is the beauty. That's what all this energy that is being focused on these cryptocurrencies should be focused into remonetizing gold. That is the way to take the power away from the politicians. The only problem is they may stop that. But you know what? All the governments won't stop it. Some governments will allow it. And there will be a way for it to thrive because gold will work. It's worked in the past and it will work in the future. Crypto has never worked. It's never worked as money. It's worked as it's rewarded people so far who speculated in it. Although there's still a bunch of people who bought Bitcoin at 15,000, 16,000, 18,000 who've never seen a profit. And some of those people might have sold out when it was at 3,000 or 4,000 and they're never coming back. They got burned in that, they've learned their lesson. And people who are buying now are going to learn a bigger lesson. Hey, Paul, can you get me some water in this cup? Go and.
Good question. Now, if Bitcoin became used as widely as email, would you still prefer gold?
Yeah, and there's cold water in the movie room. That thing is working in it. Look, Bitcoin is not going to become as popular as email. Again, email is a more efficient way of sending a written communication than putting a stamp on a letter and putting it in a mailbox, right? And so the reason that emails are now so ubiquitous, and whereas when they first started, very few people used them, is because it works so well. I mean, there's so much value. That is not the case. Bitcoin today does not function as a better medium of exchange than any of the fiat currencies that currently exist. I mean, if people want to buy something right now, it's much easier to pay for it with dollars or euros than it is with Bitcoin. Now, if you live within a small group of people who want to exchange Bitcoin with one another, but it's more like barter. It's more like you have to find somebody who actually wants your Bitcoin, right? In order to transact in it. If I wanted to buy something with Bitcoin directly, not using BitPay, I would have to find the person who wants it. Remember, I said I was on Fire Island and I couldn't find a single person who wanted my Bitcoin, right? So you have to find the person. It is easier to transact in other currencies. And so that's not the case with email. People found out if I want to send my friend a letter, it's easier to email him one than to write a real letter and put it in the mail and buy a stamp. So that's why it won. It was better. Bitcoin right now is not better as a medium of exchange. Now, have people made money speculating in Bitcoin? Yes. But that's not enough. Just because people have made money speculating it in the past, a lot of people are going to lose money speculating in the future. Bitcoin is going to go bust and people are going to lose a lot of money. Then why is it going to spread? Right? And if Bitcoin goes from, 20,000, which was the high, and right now it's 10, 11,000, it was below 10,000 this morning. Let's say it goes back to 1,000. I mean, that's still way above where it started, but the vast majority of people would have lost most of their money when Bitcoin goes to 1,000 again. Well, why would, where's the appeal? When, so many people lose so much money, and then of course, all the regulation is going to come crashing down on it, making it even less efficient than it is now. So no, I mean, people try to compare the invention of Bitcoin to the invention of the internet. It's nothing like it. I mean, people say this is like the car. This is like electricity. Like this is some kind of seminal moment that Bitcoin is like the greatest invention. There are people that think it's the greatest thing ever invented, ever, like better than the wheel. This is not transformative. This is the type of nonsense that you get in a bubble when people exaggerate the significance of what Bitcoin is and what Bitcoin can accomplish. Do the people who own a bunch of Bitcoin who want to sell it, do they want you to believe this nonsense? Of course, because they need a way out. They need an exit strategy. If they want to actually buy their Lambo, somebody has to want their Bitcoin. So they have to cultivate a demand. And that's what this nonsense does. But anyway, so did everybody stop listening or was it just my son? How are we looking on people?
You were at 4,000 before, now you're at 3,000.
Oh, well.
So you've only lost 1,000.
So we have 4,000 people listening or 3,000 left. So I guess people are finding value in this format, even if it's not ideal. But yeah, Peter, is John McAfee totally wrong about crypto? Absolutely. He is completely 100% wrong. Look, and some of these guys, look, I ran into Tim Draper, who, look, Tim Draper is a smart guy. So is McAfee. I've never really spoken to McAfee, but I had a nice conversation with Tim Draper. I think it was in New Orleans in the green room. And look, I mean, the guy is 100% committed. He totally believes in this. I don't think he's making this up. And he's a smart guy. So, but then again, there are other smart people that agree with me, right? And a lot of people in the investment community that I respect, like Jimmy Rogers, totally agrees with me. What's his name? Mark Faber totally agrees with me. Ron Paul was on television today. I saw him interviewed on CNBC. I've had private conversations with him. He doesn't own any Bitcoin. He thinks it's going to collapse. But, he believes in freedom. So he talks about, hey, I don't want government interfering. I believe in competition. He just doesn't think Bitcoin is going to win. But a lot of people think that Ron Paul, believes in Bitcoin. He doesn't. He believes in freedom. He believes in competition. But he thinks gold is going to win. But yes, there are some smart people that have been suckered into this. Now, again, I don't know, because there are a lot of people who have a lot of money in Bitcoin that, they have a vested interest. Now, people say the same thing about me. Peter, well, you just need the price of gold to go up because you own it. Look, nothing that I say is going to influence the price of gold. And there's always going to be buyers for gold. But believe me, everything that people say, these big whales, everything that they say is influencing the price of Bitcoin. All this pump, all this stuff, this hype that I constantly see, right? It's all meant to get the price to go up because people need new buyers. Just like that's why it's like a naturally occurring Ponzi scheme. How do Ponzi schemes work? How do people make money in a Ponzi scheme? Because they get out from the new money that's coming in. The reason Ponzi schemes are illegal is because they never work, because there's always somebody holding the bag. Because the money that people make on a Ponzi scheme is always at the expense of the money other people lose who get in later in the game. That's why they're illegal. It's unfortunate that, the government runs a Ponzi scheme. It's called Social Security. So they're allowed to do it, right? Social Security was a great deal for Ima Fuller, who was the first woman. She paid in like $20 and collected $20,000 because she lived to be 100 years old. And she was the first person that ever got a Social Security check. So she came into the Ponzi scheme at the beginning. But the reason that Ima Fuller made money is because a bunch of millennials are going to lose their ass because they're at the end of the Ponzi scheme. But the government, is allowed to run the Ponzi scheme. And the reason that they can keep it going longer than the private sector is that they can force you to participate. The reason that the Ponzi scheme always collapses is because you can't force your victims to participate. They only stay in it until they find out it's a Ponzi. They always fall apart. Bernie Madoff was able to run his Ponzi scheme for a long time until it finally imploded on him. But they're illegal for a reason. And Bitcoin operates under the same dynamic. The people who make money in Bitcoin are the people who sell out. But you can only sell out if somebody else buys in. So, and ultimately, the gains that the people who bought early will equal the losses for the people who are left holding the bag. And of course, a lot of the money doesn't go to anybody, right? Because the only money that people can get out of Bitcoin is what they can cash out. Most of the market cap of Bitcoin will never be realized by anybody. It's just going to vanish because the price is going to go down. That doesn't mean if Bitcoin has a market cap, right, let's say of 150 or 200 billion, and the market cap goes down to 50 billion, it doesn't mean somebody cashed out 150 billion. I mean, maybe only 5 billion got cashed out, maybe less. The rest of it evaporated, right? Money heaven. That's where it's going. Let me see. What's there? You see? Somebody says sunscreen has intrinsic value. I should get some. Hey, the problem is the lights and the camera make me look red. And if you see me, when I go in studio and I have more makeup on, because and everybody too, you see people on studio. I got these big lights shining down on me, and it makes me look red. Maybe wearing this red shirt doesn't help, but I am always tan. I mean, I'm kind of naturally tan, even though I stay out of the sun. I mean, I wear sunscreen a lot. And by the way, I get my sunscreen, from Israel, from Australia. If you don't know, I've talked about that on my show. But the U.S. sunscreen is lousy because the FDA won't allow certain ingredients that really prevent skin cancer. I mean, so the rest of the world that doesn't have the FDA, they have much better sunscreen than we have in America. Of course, we have the highest incidence of skin cancer. It'd be nice if we could actually use this sunscreen, but the FDA, won't let us do it. So you gotta, smuggle it in. It's not that hard. You can buy this stuff, but you can't go into a store in the U.S. and buy it. It's illegal to sell, but you can legally buy it in other countries, and it works a lot better. But I'm not nearly as red as I appear on this camera right now.
You kind of addressed it, but this is in a different way. Bitcoin's utility is that it's decentralized and uncensorable. You can ban me from USD and metals and confiscate that. You can't confiscate my Bitcoin and Monero.
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff about Bitcoin is decentralized. I mean, that's part of the buzzword. It's decentralized. It's decentralized. I mean, you still need these miners to operate this network, right? You still are putting your trust in this whole in this system. So I don't see the big value. I mean, the idea that in order for me to transfer value when I'm transferring gold, the fact that I need a third party is not a problem. I know the third party. I can trust the third party. I can pick my third party in a free market. And of course, that's only if I want to transfer gold electronically. If I want to physically hand somebody a 10th ounce gold coin, I don't need a third party. I can just physically pay somebody. And that works fine when, you are in close proximity. But if I want to send somebody in Japan $100 worth of gold, I mean, obviously, I could put a 10th ounce gold coin, right, which would be a little bit, $1,400 off, $140. I can physically put a gold coin in an envelope and mail it to somebody. I mean, I guess I'm trusting the post office, or maybe I trust Federal Express not to lose it, but I can insure it. So I can physically, right, just take a piece of gold, put it in an envelope, and FedEx it halfway around the world. I could do that. But I can also transfer ownership using a company like Gold Money, or anybody could do it, where I have ownership of gold. It's sitting in a vault in Switzerland, and I can assign that ownership to somebody in Japan, and now they own it instead of me. And so they have the claim to the gold, and now I don't. I mean, that's fine. I have no problem. Again, third parties have been trusted for hundreds of years, and they work beautifully. I mean, third parties holding our gold worked great before the Federal Reserve was invented. In the United States, we had the Industrial Revolution. I mean, we had the Gilded Age of America, where we really became the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, where we rose living standards faster than ever before, and people trusted third parties with their gold, with their money. I mean, it's no problem. Again, I said, I'd rather trust somebody I know, somebody who I know is trying to win my business and maintain their reputation, than just trust a bunch of miners I've never met, and computers and programs, and trust that some digital asset, some string of numbers and letters, that somehow that string of numbers and letters is going to have value. Trust that, have confidence in that. That is the biggest leap of faith, right? Believing in Bitcoin requires a much bigger leap of faith than believing in any of these fiat currencies that the governments issue. And again, it's a leap of faith that I'm not willing to make. And it's a leap of faith that the vast majority of the world is never going to make. So Bitcoin is never going to achieve the type of scale that people dream about. It's just not going to happen. It's just impossible for that many people to believe in it, right? And even some of the people who believe in it now are going to give up, right? Little kids believe in Santa Claus until they grow up, and so a lot of these kids that got so excited about it are going to grow up, and they're not going to feel the way they do now. Yeah, so someone is saying it's my shirt in the green background. So, my face doesn't look red in my own monitor, though. I'm looking at myself right now. I got a monitor, and I don't really look red. But, how do I look red on yours, Paul? Yeah, because you're looking at the YouTube, and I'm looking at my monitor here. And I put a little powder on first. I guess I should have put more. But it's probably the heat. I'm sweating a little bit because of the heat of these lights. But let's see. Anything else looking good here?
A couple
Why? Somebody asked me if I only have one shirt. Why would I have one shirt? I'm not like Bernie Sanders, who's got one pair of underwear. What was it?
Facebook's new digital currency.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is another example. Facebook's digital currency. Of course, when this thing comes out, when Facebook announced Libra, the Bitcoin community immediately said, oh, this is great for Bitcoin because it's going to raise awareness. And again, making lemonade out of lemons. One of the rationale for Bitcoin, one of the things that people are saying is that Bitcoin is going to help bank the unbanked. Bitcoin is going to be the answer to a lot of poor people in countries with irresponsible governments. They can use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, right? And as a store of value. Well, Libra, if it actually got launched, would actually be a much more efficient store of value and medium of exchange, especially medium of exchange, because these poorer countries where, let's say, they live on $5 a week, they cannot possibly afford the transaction costs of Bitcoin. There's no way they're going to buy stuff with Bitcoin, but they could do it with Libra. Libra is going to be pretty much costless to use. I mean, the way Facebook wants to make money off of Libra is on the float. They want to take all the money that you use to buy Libra and hold it as reserves and earn interest on that money. They're actually acting as a bank. I mean, that's Donald Trump was right when he says, well, they should have a banking license, which they'll probably have to have, because what Libra is doing is basically collecting money. Instead of giving you a savings account, they're issuing cryptocurrency, and they're holding your money and they're earning the interest on it. They're not paying you any interest, but what they're giving you is a convenient digital currency that you can transact in. The problem that the government has is that people, they're worried about, well, now we can't track it. There can be tax evasion, right? So that's why now Facebook has to come out and say, no, we're going to do all the KYC, right? All the know your customers. We're going to make everybody who owns some Libra, supply their social security number or their passports, their address, their utility bill, and we're going to track all the transactions, and we're going to make sure that all the people who own it. But the other benefit of it, I mean, if you're using Libra, not only will the transaction cost be much lower, but let's say you buy something and you get defrauded. The merchant doesn't give you what you were buying. You can call up and probably get the transaction reversed, because the Libra network will know exactly where your Libra went and could give it back to you if you were defrauded. See, that's the other part about trust when it comes to Bitcoin. You have to trust, because once you spend your Bitcoin on something, you can never get it back. If somebody cons you out of your Bitcoin, it's gone. If your Bitcoin is stolen, it's gone, right? That can't happen with Libra, right? If somebody steals your Libra, Facebook will know exactly where it went. They can get it back. They can retrieve it, right? Now, I know merchants like the fact, hey, there's no chargebacks. If all sales are final, right? If somebody pays. But the problem with that is most merchants, a good merchant, if you're not satisfied, they'll give you your money back. But you could have some scammers on the internet. Somebody scams you out of your money, and they got your digital currency. I mean, good luck with it. So I think that Libra, to the extent that it actually gets off the ground and works, will actually dominate the market that Bitcoin is hoping to cultivate, right? The unbanked, poorer people in countries that have really bad fiat currencies, where the governments are printing them like they're going out of style. Libra will be a better solution than Bitcoin. Now, would Libra be better if it was backed by gold? Yes, but it's not going to be backed by gold, because if they backed it by gold, Facebook would have to charge something, because Facebook can't earn money holding gold. They can earn money holding dollars and euros, because they can invest them in interest-bearing securities. Or maybe they'll start making loans. Maybe they'll start making mortgages, and it'll be a gigantic fractional reserve bank, where they won't keep all the reserves in cash, because they'll know most people aren't going to come in and redeem, right? Once you start circulating Libra, Facebook will know that everybody's not going to come with their Libra and ask for their money. They're just going to transact in the Libra, which means that they don't need to maintain their reserves in liquidity. They can loan out some money like a bank. They can have some of their reserves in mortgages or commercial paper, right? Or stuff like that. They have to have a certain amount in liquid cash to maintain the demand, and in case there's a run on Libra, if all of a sudden a bunch of people get nervous, hey, maybe there's no money there, and all of a sudden everybody's demanding, currency for their Libra. But this, banks did this before the federal government got involved. The free market was able to allow banks, private banks, to decide how much reserves they needed in immediate liquidity and how much they can afford to loan out. The government screwed that up with deposit insurance, because now the banks keep nothing in reserves because it's all government guaranteed, right? There's a huge moral hazard there. And again, I don't want to get into all this on this of how the government has screwed up the banking system. But I mean, it's a complete disaster waiting to happen. The banks are far less solvent because the government guarantees them, because they've removed all the free market discipline for soundness and safety. And the public doesn't give a damn. They don't care how much risk the bank takes, because the government says if the bank fails, we'll give you your money back. I like it when the depositors know that if the bank fails, they lose their money. Then they're going to care. Oh, shoot, I don't want to put my money in just any bank. I want to find a safe bank. And then the banks start advertising over how safe they are. Let's see.
2,500 now.
All right, so people are saying, hey, I've lost value in gold over the last 10 years, and I've made money by owning Bitcoin. That's true. That's true. Right? I'm not saying that isn't true, but that's a short period of time, right, to look at it. I mean, again, you're looking at gold went from 300 to 1,900, and now it's to 1,400. If you bought gold in 2000 at 300, you're still ahead at 1,400, right? So you've had nice gains. But yes, if you just put all your money in gold at 1,900, you're down. Now, if you've been averaging if for the last 15 years, every week you put $100 into gold, you're way ahead right now. Now, is it like Bitcoin? Of course not, right? If you started buying Bitcoin at the bottom, yes, you have a lot more money, but that's always the case in bubbles before they pop, right? You can't prove to me that Bitcoin is going to work just because the price has gone up. That doesn't prove anything, right? Does it prove that I should have bought it because I could have made money? Yes, of course. With the benefit of hindsight, you always know exactly what you should have bought. Even the stuff that ultimately goes to zero, it can go up first and you could get out before it collapses. But I think that the vast majority of people will not get out. Of course, by definition, they can't get out. If most of the people who got in early tried to get out, the price would collapse. The only reason the price is not collapsing is because people aren't getting out, right? But at some point, they have to, because that's the only way to spend your Bitcoin. Now, people live in this fantasy that they're going to hold their Bitcoin long enough until it's money. And then they can just use their Bitcoin to buy stuff. And the people that accept the Bitcoin won't have to sell it. See, right now, if you buy something with Bitcoin, it has to be sold by definition. So anytime somebody spends a Bitcoin, it's the equivalent of selling it. The idea is that in the future, when I spend my Bitcoin, I won't be selling it, because the person who accepts it will keep it, because he'll be able to use it to pay his landlord his rent, who will keep it because the landlord can now pay his workers their salaries in Bitcoin. He can pay his taxes in Bitcoin, and they can buy their food in Bitcoin. But this, you have to believe, in order for you to think that all the people who are getting into Bitcoin are going to make money, you have to believe that that's the end game. Because if it's anything else, if it doesn't end that way, then everybody who's buying has to sell. Every owner of Bitcoin is a committed seller if they want anything. If they want to actually realize the benefits of the price appreciation, if they want to live a better life, all those Bitcoins have to be sold. And who is going to buy them? You're going to run out. You're going to run out of buyers. The music stops and the whole thing implodes. How long have I been doing that? What time? My watch isn't even.
11:42. You've been going on for.
It's 11:42.
3 hours.
Oh my God, it's almost midnight. All right, so I guess we can wrap this up. Joe Rogan does these 3-hour podcasts, but it's two people usually. I'm doing it by myself. Although I thought that I would have people talking. I didn't realize that this was the format. But let's try to do it exactly till midnight. So I got another 17 minutes. But let me see. A lot of people have hung in there, I guess. Maybe I don't have that many women listening because they were probably watching The Bachelor, which is on Monday nights. or it's actually the Bachelorette now.
One person said that Hitler confiscated gold from the Jews, and if the Jews had Bitcoin, they would not have gotten it confiscated.
Well, obviously, Bitcoin wouldn't have worked in Nazi Germany. They didn't have computers back then. But look, I'm sure that if there was a government, a Nazi-style government around today, I don't think that Bitcoin would be a safeguard. That's the problem. Because first of all, if everybody is storing their wealth in Bitcoin because they're worried about an oppressive government, it's also possible that before the government really becomes that oppressive, the Bitcoin could have collapsed. I mean, you can't have your emergency money, your safe haven money, in something as unreliable and untested as Bitcoin. I mean, in fact, everybody that owns Bitcoin has to concede that there's a chance that I'm right, and there's a chance that it's going to collapse to zero. That chance does not exist with gold. You know, in our lifetimes, gold is not going to be worthless. Gold is going to have value. So if I have gold stored in a safe for emergencies, I know that when the emergency hits, that gold is going to fulfill its purpose. We don't know that with Bitcoin. If you think Bitcoin can go way up, it's only because it can also go way down. There isn't reward without risk. Anything that can go way up can come crashing down. And things tend to go down a lot faster than they go up. And that's the case with Bitcoin as well. And so if you're in Bitcoin, you're in a high-risk asset. And a high-risk asset is not for your safe money. It's not the money that you want to, keep, just in case things go bad. Because things might go bad with that cryptocurrency before you actually need it. And then you've got nothing. Let's see. What else we got here? What does it say here? Yeah, so somebody's saying if there's no electricity, water and food will be worth more than gold. Not really. I mean, look, if you are stranded by yourself on an island, then there's nobody there. Obviously, water is more valuable than anything, or food. But if we have a collapse of the system, if you have gold, you will always be able to buy food. You will always be able to buy water because somebody will have extra water. They'll have more water than they need, and they'll be willing to give you some, and they're going to expect something in return. So no matter how bad things get, we will still use money instead of barter. It'll still be more efficient to get the things that we want by paying for them with something like gold versus just reverting to barter. So to the extent that things collapse, you will be able to buy the things that you need. But sure, does it make sense? I mean, people can store food and water because obviously, I mean, if there's a hurricane or something bad happens and you can't actually physically leave, if you can't get out of your house to buy some food or water with your gold, well, then you better have some food and water right there because you have no ability to transact with somebody. So in that respect, I can certainly see circumstances where having water and having some food is more important than having the ability to buy food, but you can't actually access anybody who has extra food or water to sell. But of course, remember, if all the power goes out, you can't do anything with your Bitcoin unless, I mean, I guess in theory you can write down your code on a piece of paper and hand it to somebody. But that seems like a pretty inefficient thing.
A lot of positive comments. They want you to do this more. So if you do end up wrapping up soon, you might want to ask people like more topics they want to hear. People have asked.
Yeah.
Want to talk about housing in the future.
So so apparently I know we're getting some comments here that people are liking this, and I think it may be more. I think this type of thing may be more appropriate for a Q&A. I mean, see, my original idea, which really didn't work for this thing, was that the people who were participating were going to try to educate me and they were going to tell me stuff. But it doesn't really work that way with this format. I think what would really work well with this format is where people are just asking me a question, in real time that I can just answer, right? That seems like and that's probably what typically happens with these, live streams and chats. And then maybe, there probably can be some chatting going on, right? I'm sure the people who are participating can chat with one another, right? And people can, can respond to what other people write. I mean, people have said too, when I do my podcasts, I should do them live or I should do them with video like I started. But I found that it's a lot easier for me to just record a podcast, and then when I have some time, and not even have to do it on a video, because sometimes if I want to slightly change it, or if I want to, if I I'm lose my play, I'm looking for something, I can take a 4 or 5 minute gap and then come back. Whereas if I'm doing it on video, it's hard to edit that out. So it would make some of my longer podcasts even longer if I couldn't sometimes edit it out to make it tighter. But this format, right, where I'm asking questions, makes sense. So obviously a lot of people are still on, and I don't know how many people are going to listen to this, because I think we're going to post it up on my YouTube channel. So the people who are listening to it live now, more people can listen to it later on. If they can sit through this. I don't know. As I said, my son decided to bail on it, but I don't know. Maybe when you're younger, you don't have as long an attention span. Although he probably had more interesting things to do. Have I read George Gilder's new book? No. Come on, I'm looking to try to find a good Bitcoin.
People want to know, when will you change your mind? Giving measurable metrics. Like what would make you?
So people are asking to me, what is going to change my mind? Well, clearly, obviously, if somebody can convince me with an argument to change my mind, I would change my mind. If I was convinced that the price of Bitcoin was going to go way up, why wouldn't I buy it? Right? I would, right? The problem is I'm not. I'm more worried about the price collapsing than I'm convinced it's going to go up. I acknowledge that it could go up before it collapses, but it may not. And even if it does go up, will I get out in time? I don't know. Meanwhile, there are other things that I'm investing in that I'm 100% confident are going to do well. And so I can sleep better at night with those investments. I am at a point in my life. I'm 56 years old, and I don't want to take crazy chances, even if it means that I can hit a home run. I don't need a home run. I just need to get on base at this stage of my life. But apart from that, I'm not going to be convinced by price, right? People say, oh, if it goes to 50,000, well, I don't think it's going to go there. But if it goes there, then I'm wrong about thinking it won't go there. But it just means I'm underestimating how big the bubble can get. I would be very surprised if the bubble got that big, given where we are. I will be very surprised if we even get above 20,000, because almost everybody in Bitcoin believes that 20,000 is a sure thing. Well, when everybody believes it's going to happen, it probably won't, right? And so it doesn't mean it's not, it can't, it could. It went there once, so it can go there again. But I just think it's a bad bet. I think it's a better bet that it's going down. So price is not going to change me. I can go and say, oh, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I should have bought it because I could have sold it to a greater fool, right? But what would actually convince me that I was wrong would be the end game. If, in the end, Bitcoin does become the world's money, right? If confidence never goes away and we do get to the promised land, right, of Bitcoin being money, where I start transacting in Bitcoin, and what people say is that the volatility will go away once the price is high enough, right? Whatever it is, 1 million of Bitcoin, 5 million of Bitcoin, I don't know, but at some magical point we're going to reach a permanently high plateau, and it's no longer going to be volatile, and the price is going to be stable at this really, really high level. and it's going to be used as a medium of exchange and a store of value, and prices are going to be, I'm going to go into a store, oh, this is a Satoshi, that's 2 Satoshis. Everybody, I'm paying my employees, their salary is denominated in Satoshis. People are paying, taking out auto insurance, health insurance. My deductible is in Satoshis, right? Everything is in Satoshis. Then I'm wrong. And I would have missed out on a fortune. I mean, I'm not going to be poor because I'm still going to have, my physical assets. I don't think my gold is going to be worthless in that scenario. I don't think my stocks, I own a lot of companies. And so the stocks that I own will be paying me Satoshi dividends because they'll be earning revenue in Satoshis, right? Because they'll stop charging euros or yen and they'll start charging Satoshis, and my dividends will be coming in Satoshis. And yes, will I have blown an opportunity to be a multi-billionaire? Sure, right. And all these kids that, I'm ignoring, right? All these kids that put their bar mitzvah money or that put their, whatever money, they're living in their parents' basements. Yes, they're all going to have higher net worths than me because they hodled till the end, right? They were right? It ended up working out. So at the end of the day, if that happens, well, then I was wrong, but I don't think it's going to happen. Long before that happens, this whole thing is going to come crashing down. And people are going to lose a lot of money, just like they always do, Yeah.
Zimbabwe banned the US dollar from being used, so local Bitcoin demand is soaring again. Any thoughts on why people there want Bitcoin rather than gold?
Well, somebody is saying that demand for Bitcoin is soaring in Zimbabwe because the government banned US dollars. Look, I doubt it. I'm not even sure how many people in Zimbabwe have cell phones or computers. I mean, how are you going to get into Bitcoin if you're not online, if you don't have a phone or a computer? So, I mean, if you're too poor to afford that, you're not going to be able to get involved in Bitcoin. Now, I do think there may be some of the wealthier people that may be speculating in Bitcoin, but we're not actually seeing this. This whole idea that these parts of the world, people are pouring money into Bitcoin, they're not. There are some people who are speculating in Bitcoin, but most of the Bitcoin speculation is happening in wealthy countries like Japan, like the United States. And people are not buying it to use it. They're buying it to speculate on it. They're buying it to gamble that other people are going to use it, even though they're not using it themselves. So, I mean, this is all part of the hype to try to get people to think that there's this boom in Bitcoin uses. In fact, I think fewer companies today are advertising that they take Bitcoin through BitPay than 2 years ago. I mean, fewer. It's actually being used less. Not that it was being used a lot, because initially what happened is all of a sudden Bitcoin went up in value, right? And so the people who were hodling some Bitcoin had money. Obviously, merchants want those Bitcoin millionaires to spend some of their money at their establishment. So the way they were able to appeal to them was by signing up with BitPay, so they could say, hey, we take Bitcoin. And then, oh, okay, great, I'll spend some. That's why Schiff Gold did it. Why do you think Schiff Gold? I saw early on, all of a sudden Bitcoin went up. And hey, these are potential gold customers. I mean, they don't like fiat money. They're worried about it. That's why they bought Bitcoin. Maybe they also want to buy some gold. So let's make it easier for them to do it. Let's say, hey, we'll do Bitcoin. That's what all these merchants were doing. But then once the price collapsed, all the merchants lost interest in it. And of course, people weren't actually using it. That's the problem. Nobody wanted to spend their Bitcoin because they were afraid. They're the FOMO. They didn't want to miss out. They were holding it. They were hoarding it because they thought the price was going to go up. So it wasn't worth the time and effort of these establishments to say that they take Bitcoin when nobody actually wanted to spend any Bitcoin. So the whole thing was a bunch of hype. And so it all blew over. And so there's so much more hype. It's all sizzle and there's no stake there. It's just sizzle. And, people keep saying, but there's all this money going into building out the infrastructure. Yeah, I know. This is called malinvestment. People are putting this money in because they think they're going to get rich. Look, I know a lot of these crypto guys. A lot of them are in Puerto Rico. I see it. I see young computer people. They want to go there. Why do people want to go in it? Because that's where the money is. Because people made a lot of money on it because the price went up. But the price only went up because other people bought. But that music stops and then the price collapses. And we're going to find out that all this money was malinvestment, that a lot of this infrastructure, now maybe they'll find another use for it. Maybe there'll be a way to reconfigure some of this computing power and do something else with it. But it's not going to be devoted to Bitcoin. And look at the stocks in this recent rally in the price of Bitcoin. All the Bitcoin stocks haven't rallied. Why is that? Why is that? I mean, it's a whole myth that institutions are getting involved. It's retail, and it's the same retail. It's not a lot of new buyers that are discovering Bitcoin. I think a lot of people who already drunk the Kool-Aid are just buying more. The minute the price really spiked out, and now the so-called Bitcoin winter is over, that sparked a lot of renewed interest. This is it. Lift off. We're taking off. Go. Get in while you can. And some more people bought, and people are actually borrowing money. These exchanges are allowing people to use leverage. They're levering up to speculate. This is going to blow up, right? And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I haven't been convinced, to buy Bitcoin, obviously, nor do I think anybody. And again, the format didn't really lend itself to that. So I have to apologize. I didn't understand this. But I hope that, because I was inviting people who are in Bitcoin to come on. I mean, I hope that maybe I convinced some people to sell Bitcoin. And again, you don't have to sell it all. Don't be greedy. Don't be a pig. If you're right, if it's going to $1 million, you can sell some now. It's okay, because you'll make so much money on the coins you don't sell that it won't matter that you sold some now. But believe me, if I am right and the thing does collapse and you didn't sell any and you just watch all your paper profits evaporate, right? That's going to be a big woulda, coulda, shoulda. A lot of people are going to go back and look at, oh my God, look what I could have bought. Look at the things I could have now. If only I had sold. If only I wasn't so greedy. And of course, you can always buy the stuff back, Just look at how it trades. Sell it and buy it back when the price gets cut in half. Don't buy it all back. You can buy a little back. And then if it rallies, and sell. And then when it comes back down, buy. Don't feel that you can never sell, that it's going to get away from you. That's what people think. Oh, if I sell it, it's going to go to the moon and I'll never be able to buy it. I'm going to miss out on the ability to be rich. Or people know that their friends aren't selling. Oh, if I sell and my buddy doesn't sell, he's going to be much more rich than I am. Don't worry about what your friends are doing. Don't care if they get richer than you. Be smart, right? Don't be a pig. Take some of your money off the table, right? Take some of the winnings down. Play with the house's money if you have house's money. Don't play with your own money. And obviously, if enough people took my advice, the price would collapse. The good thing is most people aren't going to take my advice. They're not that smart. They don't want to sell. So you be the smart one. You sell. All right. It's midnight. I've been doing this for 3 hours. How many people are still listening?
Over 2,000.
So over 2,000 people are still listening. At the peak, we were over 4,000. Paul Maresca is the guy on the side who's been helping me. I don't know if Paul wants to come out here and say hi. You can see who's been working with me. I've known Paul for a long time. Paul worked on my campaign, that Schiff for Senate campaign. He drove the RV that I'm still trying to sell. By the way, no one's bought my RV. Hey, you know what? I'll take Bitcoin. Anyone want to buy? Any of you whales want to buy my RV with Bitcoin? I'll take it. Yeah, you can. You know what? I bet some whale will buy my RV with Bitcoin just to promote it, just to try to say, aha, look, Peter Schiff took Bitcoin for his RV. Yep, my RV, $100,000 worth of Bitcoin. I'll sell it. It's a beautiful RV. It's in great condition. Right, it's still on my property. So yeah, it's for sale for Bitcoin. Anyway, that's it. Thanks everybody for listening. I'm leaving on Wednesday morning. I'm going to go to Las Vegas Freedom Fest. Anybody's down there, make sure and say hello. Again, if you are going to take my advice and cash out of some of your Bitcoin, go to goldmoney.com. Go to Mene. You could buy some beautiful gold jewelry. They actually have a facility. They will allow you to take your Bitcoin to Mene.com and buy beautiful jewelry for yourself, for your wife. It's real gold, right? So have some gold. So, you have a different hedge. You take away some of your gambling money and put it into real money, put it into real gold, and actually do something with it. You can actually wear it, make yourself feel good, make your wife feel good, give her something special. So you can take some of your profits that you cash out and buy yourself some gold in the form of a jewelry. But again, you don't want to buy all of your gold in the form of jewelry, right? Buying many jewelry is not the best way to buy gold. It's the best way to buy jewelry by far. It's much better than overpaying for 14 karat gold, 18 karat gold. This is 24 karat gold. It's a great way to buy jewelry. But if you're going to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into gold, jewelry is not the way to go because the markups are too high. You want to get the most gold for the money. So you want to talk to Schiff Gold, Gold Money, and get money close to spot. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that out there. And that's it. And we'll do it again. So, and anybody, put some notes if you can think of some topics of what you'd like the next, one of these to be, the next Q&A, that you want to, focus it on. Of course, we could just do a free-for-all where I could just take any questions that people have, but it might be better to have a specific topic and have the questions focusing on that. And maybe people who are interested just in that will listen in. I have no idea. This is the first time I've done this. But I'm sure it won't be the last, especially if we get a lot of favorable feedback. And so you can certainly do that. You can thumbs up this thing or like it or share it or stuff like that. Anyway, take care. Thanks, everybody.